Emily presses her hands to her chest and tells Sayano that she has always loved him with all her heart. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. They stood together in a flower field under a full moon. She looked at the young man and sheepishly asked if he was against dating her. Zeon wants to say something in response, but Emily comes closer to him, clasping her hands, impatiently waiting for an answer. Zeon can't find anything to say to the girl. Suddenly, he takes her by the shoulders, saying that he thinks of her as an important companion, and because of such feelings, he will not be able to meet her. Emily looks away in embarrassment and sadly asks Zion if he finds her attractive. However, Zion convinces the girl that this is not the case, and she is beautiful the way she is. Hearing these words, Emily smiles happily. She makes a small bow and asks Zion if he would mind thinking about his decision a little more. After that, she quickly leaves, finally telling Sione with a smile that she hopes he will be able to give her an answer after they defeat the Demon King. Zion silently looks after the girl. When Emily leaves, Zion staggers as he almost lost his temper. After that, he sits down and puts his hand on the mask. He carefully removes it. Zion doesn't know what to do now. He can't believe that Emily confessed to him. Frowning, he remembers that Lamia recently told him that she could no longer hide her feelings and wanted to date. Luna, his other companion, also said that she couldn't help but fall in love with him, even though they were in the middle of their journey. Remembering that his companions Lamia and Luna also confessed to him, he lies down on the grass. It is unpleasant for him because now he has to consider 3 proposals. He starts to smile but immediately hits himself, reminding himself not to be so smug. A blush appears on his face when he thinks that as many as 3 girls have confessed their love to him, and he will naturally be beside himself with happiness. There are 16 heroes in this world, which are divided into 2 types, element heroes and holy heroes. The former possess certain elements like fire and light, while others have acquired special abilities such as the divine eye or the speed of God. Zion Axe is the hero of the element. It has been a full 13 years since he became a hero of darkness. Zion drew his sword from its scabbard, preparing for battle. A slime-like monster with tentacles and eyes appeared in front of Zion and his allies. They become alert when the creature approaches. It swings its tentacles. The monster hits the adventurers with them, but they manage to dodge. Mucus flows down the tentacles of the creature, which, falling on the grass, begins to sizzle and smoke. Zion says that the monster's slime is poisonous. Luna points her wand at the monster and asks Tsunona to provide the monster to her. She says that if it is a poisonous slime, then the fire should work. After that, she shoots fireballs. They hit the monster and it bursts into flames. However, after a moment, the monster went out. Seeing that the fire did not harm the monster in any way, Lena uses a wind blade. However, all the blades bounce off the monster, and the moon cannot believe that it is able to reflect the wind. She decides to attack with full force this time and uses a water spear, which appear around her and at the same second quickly fly towards the monster. However, the spears only dissolve when they touch the monster. Luna is breathing heavily and looking at the monster, completely not understanding why her magic doesn't work at all. Lamia decides to intervene and comes forward. She asks Luna to step back, saying that she will take care of it herself. She pulls out her sword, which emits sparks and says that the poisonous slime should be weak against fire, water, and especially lightning. She swings her sword, telling Luna that, in other words, she won't do much good since she doesn't have the lightning element. Luna is angry at her words, and she indignantly says that it's not fair, and that she just wants to show off in front of Zion. Lamia concentrates, then swings her sword and, jumping high into the air, cuts the huge body in half with one powerful swing. The monster's body is deformed. It becomes more liquid and slowly spreads over the ground. Lamia sighs with relief, and a satisfied smile is visible on her face. She turns to Luna and asks if she has any comments, to which Luna snorts and turns away. Emily smiles and praises her friend for her good work. However, the remnants of the monster behind the Lamia suddenly began to gurgle and rise. Hearing this, Lamia turns around. Luna manages to push her friend away so that the sudden attack of the monster does not hit her. The Lamia falls to the earth, and the moon falls on it. Lamia immediately begins to worry about her friend when she notices that she was holding her shoulder painfully. Looking at Luna's shoulder, Lamia sees that she has been poisoned. Lamia and Luna look at the monster and see that there were two of them now. Lamia looks at the monster and cannot believe that his weakness was the earth. Zion and Amelia run up to Lamia and Luna to make sure they're okay. Seeing that Luna is injured, Amelia tells Sayoni that they need to get the poison out quickly, which means they will have to retreat. However, Zion stands in front of the allies and says that he can handle it himself. Emily tries to dissuade him, since the weakness of poisonous slugs is the earth. Dark magic will not work on him. Zion stands in front of his allies. He holds out his hand, after which a small sphere of darkness appears in his hand. He asks the darkness to release its power, after which the earth around the monster begins to collapse and change shape. Two walls appear from the ground with a loud roar. Zion clenches his hand into a fist, after which the walls slam shut, crushing the monster between them. After that, the walls crumble again. The girls look at it with surprise and praise Zion, saying that it was amazing, and that they did not expect anything less, and he was amazing, as always. Zion turns to the girls and says that he was just lucky, and enthusiastically asks them to continue working harder as a foursome. After all four of them dealt with the monster, they rested in nature, sitting in the shadows of the trees. Luna sighs, and says that even though they are in the same party, but Zion is so strong that they just have nothing to do. Lamia is supportive, saying that her magic and swordsmanship are nothing compared to him, and she has never helped in battles. Emily sadly looks down and says that she used healing magic only once, and that was just a scratch. The girls collectively sigh sadly. Seeing how upset his friends are, Zion tries to cheer them up, saying that the three of them have been helping him fight for a long time. He tells them that the point is far from the battles themselves, but that they all supported him. Zion reminds them of the time when it was too late to save people, and one of the victims accused him that his father died because of a demon, but they protected him. Zion confidently tells the girls that if they hadn't been there, he most likely would have stopped being a hero a long time ago. He asks the girls not to make such sad faces. Luna smiles and apologizes for her words, as she was just a little nervous. Lamia also apologizes, and says that from now on she will train to show her worth. Emily smiles brightly and supports her friends, saying that they can get through this all together. Zion thanks them and invites her friends to continue their journey. Since he met them 3 years ago, they have become real companions for him. Zion believes that he can overcome any difficulties with them. On the way back, Luna asks if they can split up now. She tells Sione to come to the inn of the neighboring village. Zion is surprised that he will have to go alone. Lamia comes up and, hugging his elbow, asks for forgiveness. She explains that they just need to prepare something. Amelia says with a smile that it will be for something very important, namely for his birthday. Only after these words does Zion remember that today is his birthday. He wonders if the party will be the same as last year. These thoughts make him smile in anticipation. He tells the girls that he's going to do something else. The moon tells him to wait for the evening. As she leaves, she asks Zion not to eat anything in advance. Zion asks the girls to stop. He takes off his mask, saying that there is something he would like to tell them. Zion thanks his allies for not laughing at his stupid dream of wiping sadness from this world. He bows to them and also thanks them for always following him. However, when he looks up at the girls, he notices that something is wrong. They all look away guiltily. Looking closer, Zion sees that they are clearly worried about something, and small drops of tears are pouring from Emily's eyes. Zion apologizes to the girls, as it seems to him that he said something wrong. They smile again, and Emily wipes away tears and says that she just got something in her eye. After that, all three leave. Looking after them, Zion thinks it was too much. He sighs and puts on his mask. Stretching, he walks in the other direction. Although he has until evening, he is not sure what to do until then. Suddenly, he comes to him, and he says that since there will be his holiday in the evening, he cannot leave all the preparation to his friends. After that, he starts running fast, realizing that today he turns 25, which means he needs to stop worrying and just pull himself together. Eventually, he comes to a forest consisting of many thin trees. He stops and realizes that he will be late if he does not return soon. He suddenly notices something ahead. Zion sees that there is a group of 3 adventurers in front who are fighting against a huge orc. The goblin roars loudly and hits the ground with his club with all his might, which immediately throws the 2 guys aside. two guys painfully hit the rock, and the girl magician is very scared. Cyan realizes that they cannot withstand the goblin's power, and also did not work well with the magician, and at this rate they will be defeated quickly enough. Zion comes closer and asks people if they need help. The young man screams in fright that he has no idea who he is, but still asks for help since the monster is too strong. San understands and quickly draws his sword from its scabbard, jumping towards the goblin. He swings the sword once. He lands safely while the goblin is standing still. Zion calmly sheaths his sword. The goblin's body falls to the ground in a second, disintegrating into many parts. All three survivors watched in shock as the goblin's body was smashed into pieces with a single swing of the sword. After that, Zion says he's going to leave and says goodbye. However, all three of them run up to him saying that they haven't thanked him yet. The young man recognizes Axe because of his mask, black clothes, and beautiful voice. Zion confirms, after which they say that they are fans, and it is a great honor for them that such a great person helped them. Zion is glad that they are all right. As evening fell, Zion came to the hotel that Luna had mentioned. He doesn't understand why he's so nervous. It's just his birthday. A girl met him at the hotel. She took him to a place that was reserved for them and told him that Emily and her friends would be coming to him soon. Sitting at the table, Zion sighs and takes off his mask. He thinks about how he's still nervous. He wonders where his girlfriends are now. He also takes off his gloves. Soon Emily, Luna, and Lamia come down to him and apologize for making him wait. All three girls were dressed in beautiful evening dresses. Zion blushed when he saw his friends. He tells the girls that they look lovely. They're glad he liked it. Luna comes closer to him and gently runs her hand over his cheek, saying that today he is the center of attention. Lamia wished him a happy birthday, saying that his gift from her and Luna was the scabbard for Mask's sword. She tells Sione that the one he uses is pretty old. Emily hands him the gloves, saying that they are a gift from her. She knitted them herself in hopes that this will make them more comfortable. Zion picks up his gifts and thanks his friends, saying that he will take care of them all. Luna asks Emily where she found the time to knit gloves. Jokingly, she says that idling in their adventure is unforgivable. Emily asks her not to say that. Suddenly, a few tears roll down Zion's face. He brings his hand to his face, wiping away tears. Luna asks why he is crying, to which Zion says he is not crying. Lamia comes up to him and giggles, telling Sione that he is so cute that she would have eaten him. She puts her hands on a sword and says it's not suitable for his birthday, and asks him to give it back. Zion takes off the sword and gives it to his friend, thanking her for her care. After that, Emily comes up to him, and taking Zion's hands, asks if he would mind taking off his rings. She presses the young man's hand to her chest and asks to take off the proof of the hero ring for her birthday, so that at least for a short time she can take off this burden. Zion blushes and agrees, asking his girlfriend to hold them. Luna comes up to him from behind and asks him to take off his earrings with protection against magic. Zion agrees again and takes off the earrings, giving them to her friend. The girls stand in front of him, and Luna tells Sione that they have a surprise for him. She asks the young man to close his eyes. Upon hearing about the surprise, Zion says it reminds him that he opened his eyes a little last year. He says he will try to close them this time. Zion sits quietly, waiting, as he suddenly feels that his strength is beginning to leave him. Zion opens his eyes abruptly. He gets very scared and wants to ask the girls what's going on, when suddenly, he feels like he's been chained to a chair by magic. He immediately remembers that he gave his magic-proof earrings to the moon. Suddenly, he hears someone laughing, rejoicing that he has finally been caught. He says he had no idea it would take so long. Zion sees that besides him and his allies, the hero of fire, the hero of wind, and the hero of earth have appeared in the room. He looks at them, not understanding why they are here. The fire hero grins and says he will answer Sonona why they are here. He claims that it was all their magnificent plan, which took 3 years. The hero of the wind says that they joined forces to get rid of him, and the hero of the earth explains that the comrades he trusted so much actually worked for them. Zion can't believe what he's heard. He desperately says that this is not true, while his former allies, who are holding him now, only guiltily look away. The characters laugh at him. calling him naive and saying that it was thanks to his naivety that their plan worked. Zion asks them why they are doing this at all. The fire hero replies with disdain on his face that they are doing this because no one can defeat him in brute force. Even the Demon King was scared and began to behave more calmly. The Wind Hero tells Siona that she was, of course, jealous, since he is not only the strongest, but also the most famous hero. All three heroes stand behind Zion and say that many will say that the strongest hero of the elements is Axe. And even heroes with divine power who look down on them consider him an exception. The hero says it's time to take away his magic power. Three heroes bring crystals to his body. Since this is Zion, they need to work. They ask him not to hold a grudge against them. They begin to turn the crystals, and Zion feels incredible pain. Zion screams in pain, and soon the crystals crack. The Wind Hero picks up the dark shards and says that 90% of Zion's magical power has gone with it. He gives the pieces to the Wind Hero and asks her to deal with it. She leaves the room. Going outside, the Wind Hero throws numerous fragments into the air, intending to scatter them around the world with the help of the wind. Returning to the others, the Wind Hero laughs at Zion and mockingly asks why he shouldn't try to pick up all the pieces. Zion is silent, head bowed as the wand is pointed at him. Looking at him from above, the hero of the earth says that now, so that he cannot approach either the heroes or the Demon King, they will teleport him into the dark forest. Zion sighs painfully, then visibly tenses up. He turns to Luna and asks if everything she told him when he was depressed was a lie. He asks Lamia if she was pretending when she was laughing happily while practicing fencing. Zion desperately asks Emily if she really thinks they have a bond, as she always said. Zion, desperately screaming, asks them to answer him. At that moment, the magic holding him disappears. Everyone is flying around, and the girls are trying to hide. The hero of fire does not understand how he was able to free himself so quickly, because they had already exhausted him. The hero of the wind turns to the frightened hero of the earth and demands that he teleport Zion as soon as possible. Zion turns to the moon and demands that she answer him. Luna shivers and says in a scared voice that she was just following orders, which is why she did it. Zion then turns to Lamia, who also replied that she was only doing what her real party ordered her to do. He reaches out to Emily, hoping that at least she hasn't betrayed him. She just says that she was just following orders and that she is very sorry. Zion freezes in place when he is convinced that it was true. Even if he tried his best, even if he finds something irreplaceable, it will all slip away so easily. The fire hero demands that Zion be teleported immediately. The fire hero points his wand at him and uses exile. Zion stands completely unresisting, allowing his body to move. He understands that his life will always be like this. Once in the dark forest, Zion lies down on the ground, looking up at the sky. He realizes with horror that he actually never had any companions, and it was all an illusion. Zion assumes a sitting position and bows his head. He understands that their love, which they talked about, never happened, but he trusted them. He keeps desperately saying that he trusted them. After that, a desperate cry is heard throughout the forest, full of pain from such a cruel betrayal. Next to Zion, among the trees, there is a large, dark cave. He has no sword, no equipment, and besides he lacks magical power. With these thoughts, he slowly gets up from the ground. Zion gets up, staggering, and realizes that if this is really a dark forest, then he is now on a completely different continent. There is a rustle nearby, and Zion looks up. The monster is approaching him, cracking branches under him. An org of enormous size is rapidly approaching him, intending to attack. Zion looks at the tall org with indifference, after which he spreads his black wings. He flaps his wide wings, after which many sharp feathers fly out of them, which fly into the organ and pierce through his body. The defeated org falls to the ground, and Zion retracts his wings. He understands that such a rival is no good, and the end of his life as a hero at the hands of such an inept monster is simply pathetic. It starts to rain, and Zion begins to wander aimlessly through the dark forest. Suddenly, he feels something strange. He feels as if he has suddenly been thrown into a tremor. Zion looks up and sees an animal that looks like a fox looking at him. Zion tries to stay calm. Zion believes that the creature standing in front of him is beautiful, and his mind is visible even in his noble pose. Zion slowly comes closer. He asks the animal if it understands him. It says it understands. Zion praises his pronunciation. The fox says he was playing with people who entered this forest. Zion asks the fox if he will eat it. The fox flaps his tail, saying he won't do it. Zion and this creature stand in silence for a while. The former hero looks at the fox with fascination and admiration. Zion turns to the fox and desperately says that he no longer wants to live, and asks this beautiful creature to take his life. The fox asks him too. Zion and the fox look at each other in silence. Zion will never forget that day. It was his 8th birthday. He was lying on the ground, scared and wounded. The man's body was pierced by several swords. A dead woman lay on the ground, and next to her stood a man with a bloody sword, who held the body of a little girl by the hair. Zion looked at the bandits in front of him in fright. The bandits stood in front of him, grinning. Someone continued to crack down on people, and someone stole valuables. Looking at the child, one of them swings a sword. Zion looks at him in horror, frozen in fear. However, suddenly an unknown man appears in front of Zion, who with one swing of his sword dealt with all the bandits. The man folds his sword and bends over the child, saying that it is incredibly cruel and there is only one survivor left. He held out his hands to the child and said that everything had already passed. On the day when Zion's parents and sister died, the hero of darkness saved him. Then Zion became a disciple of the hero of darkness and became one himself at the age of 12. From that moment on, he had both good and bad memories. After that, he met Luna, Lemia, and Emily, and finally believed that he had truly found true happiness. However, happiness will always slip out of his hands easily. If there is such a thing as fate, then Zion is sure that he was definitely born with a bad fate. Zion stretches out his hands to the fox and asks to take his life. Suddenly, the fox asks him the same thing. Zion and the fox look at each other in surprise. Zion asks the fox if he really asked to take his life, and the fox confirms. They understand that they want the same thing. The foxes smile sweetly at this coincidence, and Zion laughs softly. Zion turns away, and the fox waves his tail and asks why he is laughing so much. Zion thinks that the fox's speech is like the babble of an old man fixated on the past. He apologizes, saying that for some reason he looks like a human being, besides being smart. The fox stops wagging his tail, stands up in a proud pose, and says that Zion is very kind, even though he is just a fox. Zion enthusiastically looks at the big fluffy tail, fur, soft paws, and twitching ears. Zion smiles, as it all calms him down. He tells the fox that he wants to talk. The fox says with a smile that he also wants to talk, but first asks to be allowed to burn it. After that, the monster behind Zion suddenly ignites. The monster starts screaming in pain. Zion walks away from the fire, covering his face, and says that he did not notice the monster because he was distracted. The fox says it to Chibolin, and they're adept at covert attacks from the back. Zion looks at the burning monster. The fox flaps his tail and asks Zion to follow him to a quieter place. He will lead. Zion decides to go after the fox. Eventually, they come to a small field with flowers. Shion sits down on a stump, and the fox tells him that his name is Hakuko. He tells Shuon that he can just call him Haku, and he identifies himself as a male. Zion introduces himself and says that he is already a former hero. Haku tells him that he understands. He waves his tail and says he doesn't know much about people because he's only lived for more than 300 years. Haku asks Sione if he can tell him the story of his life. Zion nods, saying that he would like to hear it. Haku begins his story by saying that he once lived with his family. They settled in this forest. He says that everything used to be peaceful, but then his parents, a friend, even his child died. In the end, his grandson died. Zion asks if they died because of the monsters. Haku says that this is the natural course of events. He is a variant. Variants are mutated monsters. Shion realizes that Haku gained tremendous power, so he lived longer, and that he lived alone all this time while losing loved ones. Haku says that the average lifespan of a demonic fox is about 50 years, but he is alive and well after 300 years of life. A flower bends down to Haku, Accumulated dew falls from the petals. He says he no longer wants to be alone and see someone close to him die. Looking at Zion, he notices something. Tears are pouring out of the eyes of the former hero, which he's trying hard to hold back. Haku incomprehensibly asks his friend why he is crying. Shion sobs and says in a trembling voice that he is not crying. But Haku does not believe him and asks if he is crying too much because the tears are pouring out. Tears fall on Zion's hands, and he says in a trembling voice that they are not tears but sweat. Haku finds this funny, as he has never heard of such an excuse. Zion tells the fox that he understands him, as he too has lost his family and everyone he loved. Haku says he now wants to hear the story of Zion. The former hero is not sure where to start. After hearing the story, Haku also cries a lot, saying that Shion's life has been so sad since childhood. Zion asks the fox what is the saddest part of his life. Haku says that his grandfather, who lived next door, died, and Zion understands him. Haku wipes his tears with his paw and says that it must hurt to be betrayed, and that these heroes are terrible. He tilts his gaze at Zion and asks if he will take revenge. Zion replies that everything is fine, and he has lost the desire to live. Zion gets up from a small tree stump. In this case, Haku offers the former hero to leave his life together. Zion says he agrees, if Haku doesn't mind. The fox replies that he does not mind, since it is better to die with someone than alone, although he is not a human being. Haku giggles, and Shion says that he has a slightly strange laugh. The fox's expression changes a lot. He starts to look like a ferocious animal. He tells Zion that then, it turns out, they will both die soon. Zion uses his remaining magic and summons the Black Winged Sword. He confidently says that he is always ready, after which he takes the sword in his hands and stands in front of the fox. Zion never thought that he would die in this way, and, until recently, he could not even imagine such a thing. But it turns out that it is not so bad. Shion swings his sword as Haku heads towards him. Haku happily chewed meat happily. Zion looked at the fox and says that his need for food is amazing. Haku happily swallows meat. Licking his lips, Haru apologizes to him, saying that he may not look like that, but he eats quite a lot. Zion hands him more meat, saying that he meant the size of what he eats. Haku is quite biting meat. Haku is actively chewing and asks Shion if he thinks he is fat, despite the fact that he has a thin body. Zion says the meat is falling out of his mouth. Haku says it's because he said something strange. Zion doesn't fully understand how this happened. Earlier, when they were already swinging at each other with the intention of killing each other, suddenly a loud rumbling was heard. It was a failure. Haku, with a sweet smile, offers them something to eat before they die. Zion didn't think it would stop them. Haku licks his lips and says he doesn't like raw meat, so he roasts it. He burps softly and apologizes. P burps softly and apologizes. Zion laughs and says that white foxes also know how to burp, and things that he does not know. Haku says he is confused. After eating, Haku puts his paw on Shion's shoulder. The fox asks the hero if he doesn't need to do something else in this life. Haku says he has lived too long, but Zion is different. Zion replies that he has nothing special. Haku is surprised and asks if there is no one he would like to see or apologize to someone. Zion thinks about Haku's words, and suddenly he remembers something. Haku immediately gets up, saying that someone is there after all. Haku is hanging around, offering to meet this man, because Zion may die after that. Shion wants to say something in opposition, but Haku interrupts him and lies down in front of the man. He asks Zion to climb on top of him. Zion looks at the fluffy fur of the beast and smiles, after which he carefully climbs on top of it, asking for forgiveness. When he gets up, Zion is surprised at how tall the fox is. Hak asks where the person that Zion wants to apologize to is. Zion says he is in the village of Karoo, which is in the same region as this forest. Haku happily says that he knows this place because they were indebted to him in the past. After that, he starts running fast in that direction. They are speeding through the forest. Zion thinks it might be fate that he met Haka here and teleported to this place by accident. And maybe she tells him to visit her grave after all. They arrived at the village of Karoo. Haku doesn't mind and says that this village hasn't changed at all. Zion asks how he is related to Karoo. Haku says that he once stayed here and helped this village when it was attacked by an ogre. Haku says that he once stayed here and helped this village when it was attacked by an ogre. Haku says he doesn't think there are any more people left from that time. One of the villagers notices them. He runs up to them as he recognizes Master Axe. Zion greets him, saying it's been a long time. The man calls the others, saying that Master Axe has returned. All the villagers immediately leave their houses and run towards Zion, saying that they were all waiting for him very much. An elder approaches him and thanks Zion for coming. Zion greets the elder, after which he is silent for a second, not daring to ask his question. Zion asks the elder where Lin is. He replies that Lin is not in the village right now, but she will most likely be back soon. Then Zion says that the first thing he needs to do is something. Haku and Shion come to the cemetery. The fox says that Zion is so popular that all people have ignored the rare fox monster. Zion says that once upon a time he took care of everyone here. He puts a small bouquet on one of the graves. Zion says that she was one of the people he loved, and she died because of him. Haku respectfully introduces himself to the deceased as a friend of Sona. Axe looks sadly at the tombstone and frowns when he remembers Marie. Suddenly, something flies into his head. Zion turns around, rubbing his head, and sees that it was a potato. He sees that someone has approached them. The girl picked up the potato and asked him why he had come. This young girl turned out to be Lin, whom he was looking for. Zion says with a sad smile that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Lin reminds him that he said he would never come back. He apologizes to the girl. Lin says that if he visited the grave, he has already finished and demands that he leave, throwing potatoes at him again. An elder comes up to them and gets angry at Lin, not understanding how she can say such a thing. He says that what happened to Marie was not Axe's fault. On the contrary, many of the villagers were saved thanks to him. The elder demands that Lin apologize. Lin turns away resentfully, saying it's not her fault, then screams that she's had enough and runs away. The elder apologizes to Axe on behalf of Lin. Zion asks the elder not to do this, as Lin's attitude towards him is natural, and he does not want them to be cruel to her. He asks to be left alone for a while. Zion stands in front of Marie's grave and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and a lot has happened since that moment. He stopped being a hero. Zion remembers the silhouette of a girl. Marie greeted him with a smile, glad that he was back. Zion got down on one knee in front of Marie, making a marriage proposal. He says he wants to live with her forever in this village. She agrees to the proposal and puts on the ring. However, later, the wyvern attacked the village. It was noticed in the vicinity for a long time. The residents were very worried, but he could not change anything. Zion and several people stood in front of the coffin. They said that while Axe was away, a wyvern attacked the village, and Marie got caught in the fire while protecting a child who fell behind. Little Lin tearfully asked why Axe hadn't come sooner, because then her sister wouldn't have died, even though he said he would protect her forever. Lin calls Axe a liar. Zion stood in front of Marie's grave, not knowing what to say. After that, he came to the house of one of the residents and knocked. It was opened by Lin, who changed her face as soon as she saw Axe. She angrily asks what he wants from her. He tells her that he just wants to talk to her. Zion says that he has stopped being a hero, so he would like to do something as an atonement if she wants to ask him for something. Lin thinks about it, then agrees. She asks Zion to catch her a golden snake. Axe is a little surprised by this request and remembers that this is a very rare breed of snake. Lin frowns and reminds him that she asked him not to leave at the time because she had a bad feeling, but he didn't listen. Zion bows deeply, saying that he's very sorry. Lin gets angrier. She says he doesn't have to bring a snake. Lin slams the door in front of him, demanding that he never appear in front of her again. Lin is standing outside the door. Looking at the ring on the table, she turns to her sister and desperately asks what she should do. Haku walks up to Shion and asks if he's finished. He says he's almost done, but he wants to find the golden snake in the mountains. Haku is happy to see that this is something important to him. Shion asks Haku if he wants to go or stay in the village. Haku replies that he will go, although talking with the elder, who talked about the village, took a lot of time and effort. They come to the mountains and Haku asks if the snake is on this mountain, and Zion confirms. He says that if they are lucky, it will take a few days, and if not, then a month. Hao says it's better than the dark forest, but Zion disagrees. Zion did not expect Lin to forgive him, and yet, he is determined to find a golden snake for her. Haku and Zion are standing in the forest. Zion says that the golden snake is a snake, obviously golden in color, and the only problem is that it is a very careful animal. Shion tells Haku that this snake almost never shows up, so they need to check every corner, and Haku agrees. Then Shion offers to split up, but Haku suddenly remembers something. He fumbles in his fur, saying that he almost forgot. He gives Zion gloves, saying that they are much better. Shion looks at the gloves, and with a smile, tells Haku that they are really good, and asks where he got them from. Haku replies that the owner of a shop in the village of Kuru gave them to him. Haku also says that he refused to accept the money, despite the fact that he wanted to pay, as it's nothing compared to what Zion did for them. Haku says with a smile that the villagers seem to love him very much. Zion agrees, saying that they are really good people. On the first day of the search, Zion was rummaging through the grass, after which he turns to Haku and asks if he found something. Haku saw a snake in front of him. He asked Zion if a tiger snake would be suitable. Axe asks him to be careful, as he will be bitten if Haku harasses him. It hisses at Haku. He jumps on the fox and bites his nose. Haku sticks his head out of the bushes, saying that he bit him. Zion turns to his friend and says that he is very poisonous. Haku begins to make strange noises and groan, after which he falls on his side, saying that he is in pain. Zion immediately excitedly runs up to his friend. Haku wearily tells Zion that he is very glad that he met him, after which he says goodbye, laying his head on the grass. Zion looks at the fox with indifference. He sarcastically asks if he should clap for such acting. Haku stretches and says that it would be nice, after which he gets up. Haru giggles, apologizing to his friend. Zion strokes the fox's tail and says that it turns out to be quite naughty. Haku feels nostalgic, saying that they have always done this. He says that's how he played with his family when they were alive. Shiwon sighs and asks his friend not to forget about the search for the snake, and Haku agrees. On the second day of the search, Haku and Shion rested together. The fox sadly says that they never found the snake. Zion reminds me that no one said it was easy. Haku says that he has heard about Lin and Marie, or rather, the elder decided to tell them. Zion understands. Fox doesn't think it was Zion's mistake, and Axe thanks him. He says he's hungry from these conversations. The fox immediately gets up and quickly runs off to hunt. A few hours later, Zion, looking at a pile of animal carcasses, asks if this is too much. Haku only says that his stomach told him to keep hunting. Zion sighs and offers to roast it all, which pleases the fox. On the third day, Haku asks Sion if he can repeat what the golden snake looks like. It's just that he hasn't been outside for a long time. Not because he's old. Zion says she looks like a rattlesnake, and her scales have a special dark yellow light. Haku points to a snake nearby, asking if it looks similar. Shion agrees, and Haku says that she can probably be sold dearly. After a few seconds, they realize that this is the golden snake and start running after it. Zion orders Haku to enter from the right side, and the fox obeys. Haku hits the snake with his paw, but it escapes. Haku says that this snake seems to be even more agile than he thought. Zion says he wants to catch her alive if possible, and then Haku changes tactics. He says that he will use his skill, after which the tufts of his fur are twisted and the sharp ends fly into the snake. Some of them get hit, and the golden snake stops. Haku says he calls it a wool needle. By changing the hardness of the wool, he can apply the effect of sleep or paralysis when hit. Zion praises his friend and runs up to the snake, picking it up. He says that Haku apparently used sleeping needles. Haku looks at the snake and asks why it hasn't fallen asleep yet. Zion explains that snakes simply don't have eyelids. Haku can't believe that he lived for 300 years, but he didn't know it. Zion pats him reassuringly, saying that it doesn't matter that he doesn't know much about snakes. The more impressive thing is that he can shoot fur like needles. Haku giggles and asks Shion if he really thinks so. Axe confidently says that this is so, and all thanks to the hack. The fox giggles playfully again and asks for more praise. Haku waves his tail and confidently says that Lin will be completely satisfied when she sees the golden snake they caught. Zeon says he just hopes it's enough for his first and last reckoning. Haku asks him not to say something so sad. He says he thought for a long time, but did not understand why Lin needed a golden snake. Sion says it's most likely because it's a pretty rare monster, and she can make a lot of money if she sells the snake. Haku says he seems to have forgotten something about the golden snakes, but he can't figure out what it is. Suddenly, Haku feels something. He tells Zion that he has heard the footsteps of 3 beasts and they are approaching very quickly. Haku tells his friend to climb on top of him so that they can escape faster. Haku runs fast, but the wolf-like animals quickly catch up with them. Haku realizes that the creatures are apparently targeting them. Zion shouts to the fox that they are attacking when he sees the wolves jumping towards them. Haku tells him to rely on him, after which he opens his mouth wide. The fox quickly bites into each of the wolves, continuing to run forward. Shion knew that the fox was very strong, and Haku modestly says that it was easy. Haku says that he, like other animals, has claws and fangs. Zion asks him if he can use foxfire whenever he wants. Haku replies that this is only possible if the enemies are at a certain distance. Besides, it is not very effective against some types of monsters. Shion reminds that Haku still has a skill that allows him to shoot wool. Haku confusedly says that he is a fox with 1,000 riddles. He says he should return to the village as soon as possible and give the snake to Lin. However, when they return, they see that the village has been destroyed. Haku notes that the village looks strange, and Sion agrees and suggests to hurry. Zion runs to the elder and asks what happened there. The elder is glad that Axe came, as an hour ago a group of robbers unexpectedly attacked the village. Zion is wounded and asks what happened to the hunters they hired. The elder replies that they all died. The leader of the bandits was so strong that they could not even imagine. Then Zion asks what Lin is, hoping she hasn't been stolen. The elder says with regret that not only she was stolen, but also all the women and children. When asked where they went, the elder replies that they're going south and asks to help them. Zion bends down and says that he does not need to be asked about this. Because Marie was born in this village, of course, he will do everything in his power to save this place. Zion approaches one of the dead and takes his sword, asking for forgiveness from the deceased. He approaches Hook and asks if he can help. The fox puts his paw on Zion's arm and says that there is no need to ask him, and he will go with him even to hell. After that, Zion quickly climbs the fox. Zion asks the villagers to wait a little longer, as he is already following them. He understands that perhaps such an incident is not a rare occurrence now. However, it is not the fault of any demon lord or monsters. The thing is that evil also lives in human hearts, especially in the conflict between people, for example, between nobles and peasants. Such a conflict can force even heroes to choose a side. And Zion was already tired of this world. He witnessed his family die in the middle of their journey with his own eyes. So he swore that he would definitely change the world when he became a hero. However, even after he has become strong, there are things that he simply cannot change, such as human greed, which knows no bounds. Haku notices robbers in the distance. Zion knows that even though he knew he couldn't change the world, he never said he would drop his heart too. Haku quickly catches up with the robbers. One of them says they are being chased by a monster tamer. Their boss orders all troops to stop. Haku stops in front of armed robbers. Zion gets down and sees that they have about 13 people, and their equipment is too good for ordinary bandits. Zion sees a cart carrying women and children and notices Lin beaten up among them. He asks their leader if he really beat them up. He replies that they had no choice, as they resisted to the end, and that's the only reason they suffered so much. He looks at Lin and says it doesn't look like she's dead. Zion pulls out his sword and asks why they attacked the village, as they are clearly not easy bandits. The boss calls him attentive and is going to tell Zion as a last gift. He says they are members of a mercenary group, and they were ordered to take some women. Zion asks who hired them, but the bandit refuses to talk. He points towards Haku and orders his subordinates to deal with the big dog. The bandits run at Haku, calling him a big dog. Haku indignantly says that this is rude, and he's actually a fox. One of the bandits hits him with a sword, and Shion asks Haku if he is okay. The bandit's sword cracks, and Haku asks not to worry about him, as his fur is too strong. He asks to leave the bandits on him, scattering them to the sides. Zion stands in front of the gang boss. He asks Zion if he knows why he ordered his subordinates to fight the dog. Shion assumes that this is because Haku is stronger than him. The bandit replies that they will just get in the way. He tells Zion that he must be strong, but he will not win, since there are powers received from the hero. Many swords appear from the magic circles. Zion begins to quickly dodge the swords flying at him. He understands that he definitely may have a special power, but if it is only of this level, even if it is something gained by this hero, he is too weak. The bandit suddenly appears behind Zion and swings at him, saying that he can't afford to get lost in thought right now. The bandit strikes with a sword, but Zion manages to block the blow with the blade of the sword. Seeing how strong the opponent is, he strains himself. Zion swings his sword. However, the bandit evades, to Zion's surprise. It seems to him that the enemy sees through him. The bandit runs away, and the blow falls on the ground. He tells Zion that he has great power. Zion once again heads towards the enemy, delivering many blows, but he deflects each of them. The bandit swings his saber, saying that it is a mystical saber of destruction, and with such a weapon he can defeat anyone. A lot of lightning comes from the impact. The sword of Zion cracks, after which it breaks into many pieces. The bandit swings his saber again. He raises his saber and confidently says that this is the end of it, after which he points the saber at Zion. However, Zion evades by suddenly disappearing. The bandit begins to look around, not understanding where his opponent has disappeared. The shadow behind him begins to change shape. Zion slowly rises from the shadows and swings the hilt of his sword over the enemy trapped in the trap. However, Zion does not have time to strike. The opponent deftly dodges. Zion is surprised that he dodged again in response to his attack, and also became even faster. He thinks that the enemy may already know what will happen in the future. The opponent says that it was already dangerous, and asks if it was dark magic. Zion says he's right. Zion says that his previous skill is insight, which allows you to feel someone's presence. Zion throws the hilt of the sword to the ground, and says that if it were just that, maybe he wouldn't be able to feel much. Zion combines this fact with the previous statement of the opponent, and comes to the conclusion that the hero of foresight gave him the ability to look into the future. Zion also says that then it turns out that the mercenary's client is also a hero. The mercenary is silent, after which he says that this is not the case, and besides that he will not be able to do anything because he is unable to accept attacks, and he does not have a sword. Zion says nothing, after which he stretches out his hands, in which a dark sphere appears and turns to the darkness. If it's the sword, then he still has it. He asks the darkness to appear before him and take the form of a sword. The darkness listens to his request, after which the sword of dark vice appears in Zion's hand. He swings his sword, and a completely black shockwave consisting of darkness emanates from the sword. The mercenary tries to block the saber strike, saying that it is useless since he sees all his movements. However, Zion says it doesn't matter anymore whether he sees them or not. The darkness reaches him and dissolves. Suddenly, the mercenary sees how everything around him suddenly begins to be covered with thick darkness. The mercenary looks around in panic, not understanding why it has become so dark around, even though it is noon. He decides that he has lost his sight, but does not understand why his eyes are not damaged. Zion says that, initially, with one blow of the sword, he would have lost all his senses. But it seems that he can only steal one sense, as it happened now. The employee falls to his knees. Zion sighs and says it's pointless to continue and offers to give up. The mercenary says that he really should give up, and points the saber at himself. Zion wants to stop him. However, he quickly pierces his body through with a saber, after which he falls to the ground, bleeding. Zion realizes that he is too late. Haku comes up to him and says he's had enough. Dozens of defeated bandits lie behind him. Shinon says with a smile that he didn't expect anything less from Haku. After that, he looks at the cart, in which only the kidnapped girls are sitting. Lin coughs up blood and, opening her eyes heavily, sees Zion. He lifts her up, telling her that she doesn't need to say anything. He understands that her condition is extremely critical. He takes out a small cone, glad that the last one is left. Zion shows Lin the potion, and says it will help her regain her strength. She's not sure if it's worth using it on her. Zion says she's using him because it's her. He helps Lin drink the potion, and her body heals instantly. Lin looks at the potion and tells Zion that they have 10 of them at home, and it's not a cure. He says it just means that the 10 potions they have are cheap. Lin suddenly starts crying, asking the guy why he cares so much about her, even if she said such cruel words to him. Zion calmly says that everything is fine and she needs to rest first. He takes off his raincoat and covers Lin, then gets up and leaves. Lin clutches his raincoat and apologizes softly. Zion just smiles back. After that, Xian and Haku return to the village. The elder sincerely thanks him for his help and hands him a bag of coins, saying that this is a small reward. However, Zion refuses and asks to use it for the reconstruction of the village. Zion says he's not good at glitter since he's a former hero of darkness. The villagers look on in silence, and he realizes that no one, except Haku, understood the joke, which confuses him. Zion asks them to rest, ensuring that there are no more bandits here, and if they accidentally sense a strange presence or something happens, he will return. The elder takes his hand and thanks him for everything. Zion asks the elder to say the same words to Lin. The elder wants to go and call her, but Zion asks not to do this, as he leaves anyway. Xian and Haku leave the village. When they are far away from the village, they look back at it. Zion says he will never see them again. Haku says he wants to discuss something about this issue. Zion says he wants to talk to him too. They hear someone calling them and see Lin running towards them. Zion is very surprised and asks if she really ran here to see him. She says there is something else she needs to say. She tells Sione that she actually knew that her sister had asked him to leave for work that day. Zion says that even if she said it, his sin will not go away. However, Lin says it's not something like sin at all. She says that he should not be responsible for this because all this time he worked for the benefit of the village and her sister and was already a true hero for them. Lin snuggles up to Zion and says that she was a child. She was very sad and she needed to blame someone, but she couldn't. She says she doesn't need it anymore. Lin takes him by the shoulders and says that now he has to live for himself, because he has already finished being a hero, so that will be enough. She asks with a smile how many people he saved today. Zion smiles softly. She says that even if he's having a hard time, he's not allowed to die. Lin gives him her basket. In the basket, Zion finds a cone with a golden snake, which he recently gave her. Lin tells him to make delicious sake out of her and drink it on the way to the city. Zion says he will be happy to drink it, after which they hug. Lin says she will look forward to his next visit. Zion says he will definitely come back, after which Lin leaves, saying goodbye. Haku suddenly says that he remembered something. He apologizes for scaring Zion and says he remembered something important. He says it's about Golden Snake's sake. Zion is asking for details with interest. Haku says that about 300 years ago, he heard a joke from an ordinary person. Haku tells an anecdote, which was that when a man got tired of life, his wife forced him to drink some sake from golden snakes, and after that he became more cheerful and forgot about death. Zion realizes that Lin has seen right through him. After that, he tells Haku that he needs to consult with him about something. He says he wants to postpone their choice to die together. Zion wants to see many more things in this world and hopes that he can still be here. Haku says that he wanted to talk to him about this earlier. He doesn't mind postponing their decision for a little bit more and continuing to enjoy life together. After that, a loud rumbling is heard from his stomach. Xian says his belly is very loud, as expected from Haku. The fox confusedly says that it's his fault, after which he runs away to hunt. Zion feels a strange feeling. Not long ago, he was a hero of darkness, thirsting for death, but now, everything is different. He gets up from the ground and asks if this is what people call a second life. He decides that it's not so bad to live wandering with a fox. However, at this moment, someone was watching him from another place. The young man was covering one eye. Magic was oozing out of the other. The young man says his plan failed, even though he took on the challenges of sharing insight. He goes down somewhere asking how far a true hero can go who has lost his strength to go further. The hero of foresight stands in front of the great Colosseum, foreshadowing something with an evil grin. The impregnable city of Organ, which will stand against both foreign invasion and the attack of magical creatures. The city is surrounded by a wall made of special material, which nothing will take. It is resistant to everything magical, and, of course, to all magical devices. Or you can become the heir of one of the heroes, that is, get his hero ring. Sion tells Haku that he belongs to the second, but in both cases it is impossible for both heroes to be with the same element. Sion has not yet met divine heroes. With the help of intuition, he can see the actions of the enemy and his strategy. Xion says that Oregon is indeed an impregnable city. He and Haku walk to the entrance of the city. Suddenly, the guards block their passage and surround them, as they consider them dangerous. Xion says that he is a simple traveler, and this is his pet, which will not harm a person. The guards demand proof. Shion orders Haku to sit down, and he obeys. He starts wagging his tail, tickling Xion. Xion says that this is how he shows love, and also collects dust. But in general, this is how he communicates. The guards notice that this wolf or fox is quite smart. They say it's too big, and in their area such creatures are usually gray, not white. Xion says that Haku is special. The Guardians decide that Haku is a magical creature of the highest level. They say they did not think that a simple traveler could have such a pet. Xion says that he can also use spells. The guards ask him to register to enter the city. Haku says he can too, and the guards ask him to demonstrate. Haku stretches out his muzzle and lets out a loud howl. A loud sound is heard outside the city. Haku says that this is a magical roar spell. It scares opponents and steals their courage. Xion says that only he hears this explanation. He asks why he turned off everyone except him. Haku looks at the unconscious guards in surprise. Haku apologizes guiltily. Xion says they'll be fine, but they were able to get through safely. Although they spent a lot of time trying to enter the city, in the time of the Heroes of Darkness, it would have been enough just to show the ring. On the way, Xion suggests that Haku register with the Adventurers Guild so that it will be easier for them to live in the city. Haku says that he probably means the third branch of the Adventurers Guild. People on the street are looking at Haku in fear. He says he probably scares people. Xion says that even though they understand that he is a pet, they are still afraid. Haku offers to sit on it. It will be better that way. Xion agrees, although he doesn't want to stand out. Haku says that his name is not only white, but also a colorless fox, and asks if Xion wants to see another form. Xion replies that it's not worth it yet, and he fully believes Haku. They come to the Adventurers Guild. Everyone looks at Haku in surprise. Xion says he didn't want to attract a lot of attention, and Haku says it's because he's here. Xion comes to the counter and says they want to register. The girl says with a smile that then they need to listen to the rules. Their guild is one of the branches that exist in each country and are involved in communication and information exchange. There are 3 branches in the body. There are 7 ranks, from E to A, S, and SS. If you do not complete assignments or fail them, the rank will be lowered. She says that the entry process is different in each branch. There are places where they take everyone in a row, and if they are accepted, they will be given a card. She asks Xion if he is a warrior mage. He says that this is not quite true, although he is not a warrior magician. However, he says that it has nothing to do with it, but it is absolutely safe, so they have nothing to worry about. Then the girl asks to talk about his abilities. He says he's good at fencing, but he's also good at magic, like low-level spells and dark magic. When she hears about dark magic, she immediately jumps up. She says with an admiring smile that he is very cool, almost as cool as Mr. Axe. Xion says he also respects Mr. Axe. The girl says that she is a big fan of his, even though many years ago. But he was in their city, but she did not have time to see him. Shion asks Haku to stop. The girl says that they have 2 exams to register, a long one in which you need to run errands for 3 months and a short one, which will take half a day. She recommends the second one. Xion asks what is required for this. She says that he must confirm the desire to pass. Then she will tell. The short exam is undoubtedly difficult and dangerous. But oh, Xion, there is no time for a long one. He says he chooses a short exam. The girl says they may be injured or killed, so he needs to sign. After that, the adventurers approach them. They take out their weapons and tell Xion that he was unlucky to choose the second exam, and now they will play catch-up. He doesn't understand what they're talking about. They say that the dealer is chasing them all over the city. The girl hands him something. She says that she will explain the exam. He must collect hats from everyone in the room in 3 hours, if possible. They passed. If time runs out or the hat is torn off, this is a failure. Zeon asks how to pick them. She replies that whatever you want, which means adventurers can do whatever they want too. She says they won't move for the next 10 seconds so the dealer can escape. Haku asks if they can handle it. Zion agrees, saying that if they get out, they'll all run away. Haku says that in this case, it will be more convenient to catch everyone here. Shiwon says that since he is joining, he needs to try his best, but also asks for help from Haku. The adventurer says that his pet, of course, looked powerful, but he will not succeed, and they will not feel sorry for him. Zion seriously says that he hasn't thought about it. He's just thinking about how to put everything together at once. The adventurer demands that he try, threatening with a sword. Zion shows a small dark cube and says it's better to use it. The cube in his hand begins to sparkle. Suddenly, the cube expands, taking over the entire room. The adventurers began to panic when everything went dark around them. Everyone started to panic and tried not to move so as not to hurt each other. The girl hears voices from everywhere, but sees nothing, and does not feel as if she has been swallowed up by darkness. She cannot even take a step. Someone demands to light a fire. The girl stumbles and falls, but Zion catches her. He apologizes to her, saying he didn't want to involve her. She blushes. Suddenly, the darkness dissolves, and Zion asks the girl who fell on him if she is okay. She jumps back in embarrassment and apologizes. She can't believe he just did it. Zion says that he was allowed to do anything. Haku says that he collected all the hats and stacked them in front of Zion. Shion says he's collected almost everything, and Haku says he's probably collected more. Zion counts the collected hats. Adventurers say that because of the dark magic, they did not notice how he collected everything in an instant. They wonder who they are. Leaving, Haku says that they did a good job and surrendered to no one without fighting or causing harm. Zion says that the dark space he used could have swallowed up the whole city, but the magic had weakened. Haku says that everything is somehow weak here. Zion says that it should be returned to the way it was. He suggests looking for an overnight stay with the remaining money. Haku says that he will not succeed and offers to sleep outside the city. However, Zion suggests looking for a place where Haku will be taken, although he is probably too tall. He says they will go to work tomorrow. Haku suddenly feels something. He begins to look around at every person around him. Zion anxiously asks if he feels something. Haku says that this feeling was there all the time as soon as they entered the city and assumes that this is a divine hero. Zion says that, in fact, he has been feeling this for 2 years. Haku is surprised that he has been feeling this for so long. Zion says he heard that he changed 2 years ago. Haku says that the new hero, it turns out, has been following him for 2 years. He says that 2 years ago Zion was on another continent and asks if he could get there. Zion, he says that he is either very strong or it is someone unrelated to the hero, because there are a lot of those who follow him. Haku wants to gather information to find out if someone knows something about the hero. Zion agrees and asks if he will go alone. Haku replies that it is, and will find it by smell when he is done. Zion came to the Beloved Beast Hotel from memory. He comes in and feels a special smell that he likes. He hears someone saying they have money. However, they came to this city on the orders of this gentleman, and they don't even have any discount. The young men say that they should report this to the mountain, because they were invited. The boys say their teacher is a dark hero, Mr. Axe. Everyone in the hotel is surprised. Zeon realizes that he has not met them before, and they hide behind his name and commit robbery. The man hugs the girl and asks for proof, as they rarely have guests who call the name of the hero. The young man gets angry, and the man immediately says that he believes them. Another man intervenes, saying that the disciples of the great hero should not behave like this, although he doubts that this is true. One of them grabs him, and the other young man says that he will provide evidence, intending to direct magic at him. The young man hits him in the chest with the magic of darkness, and suddenly his magic is sucked out. The young man says that this is a very powerful magic and demands an apology. The man screams in fright, and Zion realizes that he needs to intervene. He demands that the young man stop. After that, they release the man, who falls exhausted. The young man tells Zion not to climb. The young men stand in front of the owner and ask if he believes them now. The innkeeper apologizes and says they may not pay. The young men leave contentedly, patting Zion on the shoulder. Axe looks at the frightened people with horror. Zion asks two guys to use magic on him. Zion says that the strong uses the weak and gets everything they want, and he hates that kind of thinking. Zion says that using such strong magic to avoid paying at the hotel is a moral ugliness. The boys approach him and say that he probably wants to lose consciousness like that guy, and offer him a try. After that, they both beat him with magic. Zion doesn't react, and they say they can suck out as much magic as they want. Zion says that if they feel good, they don't care about others. He saw a lot of those who thought there, but lost. He grabs their hands, and they don't understand why he didn't faint, even though they sucked out the magic. Zion says it could be the other way around. Suddenly, the boys start screaming in pain. Zion says that a person has a limit to magic, as a little poison can be medicine, but if you drink a lot, it will be bad. The young men fall exhausted. Zion says that they have absorbed too much magic. This state can only be achieved with the help of darkness. The young men complain of severe pain and ask Zion to do something. He says that there is too much magic in them, and in half a day, everything will pass. They desperately say they will pay for everything. Zion sternly says that not only that, but they will clean up, as well as apologize to everyone. The boys immediately apologize, and Zion eases their pain a little. He helps the victim, who thanks him for his help in recovery. The owner's daughter comes up to Zion and gently takes his hand, thanking him and calling him brother. He picks her up and smiles broadly at her. Haku comes to the hotel, saying that they have fun here. The girl calls him a big dog, and Haku says that he is a fox. Zion asks if there is a room for them. The owner provides them with a room and a discount. Zion thanks him. Haku doesn't understand what's going on, but it looks like the gentleman did something good. Upon entering their room, Shion asks Haku for information. He replies that there is, especially about the hero who collected information about Zion. Axe is interested in this. Haku is talking about a group of unknown heroes called the Strongest. Zion says that the relationship between the characters is complicated. He doesn't complain and says that if they help, they will be friends. Haku suggests searching for the lost power. Zion felt that there was a place with magic stones nearby, but he still needed to work in the guild. A girl comes in and calls for dinner. Zion thanks her. Haku hurries him to the dining room, and Shion says that they will get to work tomorrow. Later, they bring 4 goblin hands, 30 mushrooms, and 8 pieces of Yuwaru grass to the guild on behalf of the guild. The girl says that everything went well and the grass is great, which Zion is glad about. She thanks both of them and calls Haku sweet and gentle. She praises them for taking on a difficult assignment on the first day. She says her name is Lily, and it's nice to meet her. Lily confusedly calls Zion a strong magician, just like Axe. He says she's exaggerating. He's not a hero. Lily says that yesterday he didn't hurt those who pointed his sword at him and saved her. So for her, he is a real hero. Shion shyly refuses compliments and notices that Haku is missing. Haku wants them to figure it out on their own. He was running across the field, heading quickly for the hunt. Haku stands in front of a large dragon and causes a thunderstorm squall, turning lightning on the monster. The monster quickly dies in the fire. Haku takes off his burnt fur and rejoices at the victory, wondering if Shion will be happy. He starts dragging the monster after him. He finds him at the guild and, when asked where he has been, asks a friend to go with him. Zion comes out and sees the monster's body. Haku says that he brought him a snake, which has an order in the guild. The employee says that the Golden Helmet clan has already accepted this order. Someone asks Lily to call the owner. A woman approaches, saying that this is not necessary. She introduces herself as the guildmaster. She tells Sayone that he is cute and her type. Lily asks her to stop. She laughs. The owner calls him to his room to talk. She had already contacted the adventurers who took that task, the Guild of the Golden Helmet rank. They said that they almost lost when they were saved by a magical beast. She realizes that Lee saved their lives, and Shion praises Haku. She says she can't pay because they haven't officially accepted the order, but she wants to thank them. She offers to sell them a snake, for which she will pay 800,000. Haku is surprised, but she says that this is a rare monster. Its fangs and skin can be used to make furniture or jewelry, and asks if they agree. Zion does not want to sell it completely, but to make weapons and magic items out of it, because you can make a powerful item from a monster. Then the hostess says that the beast saved the lives of the adventurers, and offers 10 million in a promotion to C rank. After that, Haku and Shun had lunch. Sion says that they are lucky, and Haku is proud that he brought so much money. Sion says that Haku actually wanted to save the adventurers, which is good. Hakuda doesn't say that he didn't know about the adventurers, which is good. Haku doesn't say that he didn't know about the adventurers at all. Haku speaks with his mouth full, but Shion doesn't understand anything. Haku apologizes and asks if they will go to the guild today. Zion wants to buy weapons or look for stolen magic stones. Haku says he probably wants them back. Without these stones, Zion's magic is sealed. It may be a problem in the future. It's better to find them. One of them is nearby. But Zion does not want to look for it without weapons. He wants to buy a magic sword, although it is difficult to find an equally strong sword. Haku offers to look into the home guild. He says that there is a home guild in the city where there are many orders, so you can earn even without special skills. Zion asks if the guild doesn't pay more. Haku says that the house guild has connections with the manufacturers of magic weapons. An elderly man greets them and offers to register with their guild. He says that they have 2 types of orders. The first type is various assistance. The second is the search for luxury goods. The reward will be in the form of points that can be exchanged for food or weapons. There is no ranking system. Registration is for everyone, only if you do not fail at least one order. Zion thinks they probably have powerful magic items because of their cooperation with the manufacturers. He hopes to get something powerful. Zion wants to register, and the man, whose name is Saburin, says that they have a lot of orders lately. Zion says he is looking for a sword and asks for a list of items to exchange. Looking at the list, Haku and Shion rejoice. In the list, Zion finds the saber Dark Knight, a famous indestructible sword that has resistance to dark magic. And Haku looks at the rare wild boar meat, which is almost not sold anywhere. Saburan asks if they have found the right items. Seeing that Zion wanted a sword, he realizes that the young man must be strong. He offers them a task according to their wishes. This is the investigation of the case of the theft of magical items. This is one of the urgent tasks from foreign guilds. Saburan says that the task is difficult and the reward is appropriate. Zion agrees to start today, and Saburan asks to go after him. He leads them to a warehouse with magical items. From here, they deliver goods to various places on demand. Today, there will also be a departure. Zion notices the strong security at the entrance. Saburan says that the building is filled with guards and magical protective barriers everywhere. Despite this, the protection weakens during transportation, which is used by robbers. Last time, their strongest guards were dealt with, so they don't know who stole the items. According to rumors, it is known that this is the Chain God of Death, a group of criminals who hunt for magical items. Zion asks if they hunt only at night. Saburin confirms and asks about the clues. Zion replies that dark magicians do not leave clues. He says that he has a plan and asks to transfer to the carriers. Saburin agrees. Shion asks Haku if he feels something. Haku doesn't feel anything, and neither does Shion. The fox asks about the plan. Zion says he can't use intelligence magic right now, so they'll set a trap. He summons something from the shadows and says that dark magicians rule at night. In the evening, the carriers say that this time they will allow the robbery and count on Saburin. He says that they can count on him. While everyone is distracted, a shadow approaches one of the carriers from behind, from which a bandit gets out and swings a dagger. But before he can strike with the dagger, it suddenly disappears. The bandit didn't know that someone was using dark magic here. Sabur notices him and the bandit attacks, thinking he is a dark magician. Zion kicks him, which sends him flying away. Zion heads towards the bandit to continue the battle. Zion lands a lot of punches while the bandit tries to defend himself. He dodges the blow by slipping into the shadows. He appears behind Zion, saying that he is finished no matter what, and summons the paws of darkness. The tentacles lean towards Zion, but he dodges all the blows. It seems to the bandit that he is just running away, but in fact, he's waiting for the moment until the magic is used up, since it is quite expensive. He realizes that his opponent knows the magic of darkness and the spell Dark Paws and protects the carriers. The bandit takes out and swallows a pill to increase his strength. After that, his eyes snap open. Spiked tentacles appear from the ground, which head towards Zion and quickly grab him. They pulled at his limbs, and the bandit directs the tentacles, piercing through Zion, causing bleeding. The bandit says he is sorry, but stronger. However, after a second, Zion's body suddenly disappears. He uses the Dark Clone spell. The bandit doesn't understand how he created so many doppelgangers. He only needs to kill the real one, but Zion says that even if the doppelgangers are weak, they die and rise again. He says he will not forgive the use of dark magic for selfish purposes. The bandit does not know which one of them is real and swallows a few more pills, becoming even stronger. He orders the dark snakes that have appeared to deal with each of the clones, while he's getting worse. Suddenly, his body is bleeding in many places. His monsters dissolve and he falls to the ground. Zion sees the enhancement pills and says that he knew perfectly well what would happen to her if he drank it. He says that he embarked on a path of self-destruction, although he forced him to. The bandit asks where the real one is. Zion sees that his heart is shrouded in darkness and does not understand how he could use magic. He asks how he knew about the shipping schedule. The bandit says the Dark Ones know everything, thanks to scouting the territory. However, Zion knows that he is too weak for this, and he is not from the chain god of death, since there is a strengthening pill. Zion says that there are others who have information, someone who has magic that allows you to see everything. He says that the hero of the all-seeing eye controls them. The bandit spits blood and dies. Zion doesn't understand why he would die for a criminal. He finds a magic stone near the body and understands why he felt that it was somewhere nearby. Later, he splits it, regaining some of his strength, and uses a violent dance of blades. This makes the word in front of him shatter into pieces. Haku is surprised that this is not dark magic, but such destructive magic. Sion is glad that he returned the wind magic, and the sword he received from the guild is good. Haku says that the robberies are over too. All that remains is to find the hero of the all-seeing eye. Zion says he feels like someone is using intelligence magic somewhere in the area. They resort to the Colosseum. Zion feels 5. Perhaps these are the strongest magicians of the city of Organ. 4 are inferior in strength. Haku says they are waiting for them. Come. And Sion says he felt it just now. They're heading forward. Standing at the top of the Colosseum, Zion sees a powerful stream of magic. Haku does not feel the thirst for murder. Apparently, they decided to fight. Zion says that they are absolutely sure that they will win without cheating. The hero meets Axe, a former hero. Axe says he knows that because he's been watching him. The hero tells Zion that he is the strongest of the heroes, which means that he is in danger. Zion assumes that the 4 behind him are part of the chain god of death. The hero of the all-seeing eye says his name is Randell, and it's time to remember that. He welcomes Zion to his city and to his arena. Randall stared ahead, his white hair hanging down over his face. He said he was glad to see Zion in the arena. He had been expected here for a long time. Randall's table was in the arena, with several other armed soldiers next to him, and Shion was standing with Haku. Zion stared in front of him with a serious expression. Then he raised his head and began to say that Randall was too arrogant if he considered this city his own. As soon as he left the village, it was attacked. Zion looked into them at Radil and his guards. Randil put his hands on his belt and looked up at Zion. Zion frowned and angrily said that what happened in the village could not be a coincidence. He was sure that Randil had leaked information about him and helped attack the village. Randil looked up at Zion. He put his hands together and said that the village was not attacked by his people. Zion had a magical device. In exchange for this device, he talked about showing Zion. Shion continued to stand at the top of the arena with Haku. Randall put his hand to his face and closed his eyes. Then he said that he was really a hero of darkness. He thought that this world was worthy of dying for him. Randall held his hand to his face. A magic circle began to shine in his eye, and he said that he had possessed his power since birth, and for 20 years, he looked into the most secret corners, and he was convinced that nothing could save this world. Randall put his hands together, and looking up said that the heroes use their power to live a better life, and none of them think about saving the world. But Xainan is an exception. There are no more people like Xainan, but Xainan would have more strength. Sion silently waited for Randall to finish. He closed his eyes, then Sion took hold of the scabbard with one hand and the hilt of the sword with the other. Xion held his sword with both hands. He looked in front of him and began to say that he would rather die than help the goals of the god of death, as Randall does. Randall kept his hands folded. Then he looked sharply in front of him and saw how earlier Xion was skillfully wielding his sword. Randall said that the 5 senses attack that Xion was going to use wouldn't work on him. Xion stood up in a fighting pose, holding a sword in his hands, and Haku stood next to him. Randall stared ahead, surrounded by servants. Randall's hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and he said that the only way for Xion to survive was to join Randall. Xion held the sword with both hands. A magical aura began to emanate from him. Xion said that he did not intend to obey Randall. Randall's eyes started to glow. Then he said that Xion's answer was too predictable. Randall's armed companions appeared in front of him. They began to cast spells, and suddenly gusts of wind enveloped them. The faces of several of Randall's subordinates, who were reciting spells, began to change. Wings began to grow from their backs. And in the haystack in front of Randall, instead of people, there were 2 dragons. One was white, the second was dark in color. Randall jumped on one of the dragons. His allies jumped on the other. Then the dragons appeared in the sky. Haku and Xion looked up in surprise. They were shocked that Randall was able to summon an ancient flying dragon. Randall was floating in the air, riding a white dragon. The dragon opened its mouth and began to accumulate energy to make an attack. Randall held out his hand in front of him and said that he was the strongest divine hero proclaiming the end of Xion. The white dragon launched an attack towards Xion and Haku. A flash of light illuminated the entire area. Xion grabbed Haku's fur, and together they regurgitated to a safe distance. Stones were thrown in the air by the dragon's perfect attack. Randall was riding a white dragon. He pointed in the direction of the fleeing guys. Then he viciously said that in 2 seconds the dragon should repeat the attack with fire. The dragon began to accumulate magical power, and Sion rode Haku. There were several robed men riding the dark dragon. The dragon accumulated fire and spewed it onto the ground. The arena began to blaze. The silhouettes of Haku and Xion could be seen in the fire. Randall frowned down at the bottom. Then he saw how Haku began to shine and jumped out of the fire trap unharmed, with Xion riding on him. Haku asked Xion if he was okay. Faint flames were coming from Haku's ears and paws, and Xion was riding Haku. Haku took the form of a scarlet fox, which is resistant to fire. Xion held his sword out in front of him. He looked up and saw 2 dragons flying above him. Xion said that he was grateful to Haku for saving him from the fire. The dark dragon could not move on his own. He only did what Randall ordered him to do. Haku looked at Xion, who was riding him and holding his sword with both hands. They discussed that if the Dragon Lord lost control of him, he would be lost. Xion was riding Haku. They were running through the arena. A huge dark dragon loomed over them. Randall's eyes widened. Then he spread his arms wide and shouted that the dragon should make an attack in 5 seconds. Several people in robes held wands in front of them. Another one spread his hands in front of him. They all began to cast spells, and an unusual aura appeared around the dark dragon. Xion held up his sword in front of him. He was riding Haku. Then Xion made a magical wind attack with his sword. The dark dragon was protected by a barrier, which Xion's attacks began to crash into. Xion was riding Haku. Then he said the barrier was too strong. Xion jumped off Haru. Then he entered the portal and ended up at the top of the arena, between the pillars. All this time, Xion had been thinking that he needed to use some kind of spell to break the dragon barrier. The sword of Xion was enveloped by wind currents, and the dark dragon ruled a pillar of fire directly into Xion. Xion manages to jump aside. The fire is everywhere. Haku started looking for Xion out of fright. Randall stood on the dragon and glared at Xion. Then he said that Xion would not be able to hide from him in the darkness. Xion was on his knees and holding a weapon in his hands. Sion began to rise from his knees. Randall began to shout that Sion would not be able to use his spells indefinitely by forgiving him. And now the dragon must make another attack. But only now in Haku. The dragon turned to Haku, who was running through the arena, and the dragon began to accumulate fire in its mouth to make an attack. The dragon opened its mouth wide and hovered in the air, spewing a column of flame into the arena. Haku was running through the arena. There was fire everywhere. He said that fire magic would not harm him, and it was tedious for Sion to prepare to make an attack now. Sion looked at the dragon spewing flames. He frowned and thought that the actions of the dragon and Randall were too suspicious, since they know that the fire will not harm the hack. Haku was on fire. He was running to the top of the arena. The next moment, Sion appeared in front of him, holding a sword in front of him, from which crystals began to appear. Haku stared in front of him. He didn't understand why Sion behaved like that. Sion held a sword in front of him, and in the next instant, the crystals that appeared shattered into fragments. Sion stood in front of Haku. He held a sword in front of him and said that the volley of fire was a distraction. Randall used ice magic. Randall was riding a white dragon and holding his sword in his hand. Sion found himself riding Haku. Haku looked in front of him and said that in the form of a red fox, he was vulnerable to ice magic. If Randall's attack had succeeded, Haku would have been ill. Randall held a sword in front of him that was wrapped in ice magic. Randall angrily said that it really wouldn't end so easily. Randall put his sword in front of him and launched an attack with ice magic. So the dragon attacked the guys with fire. The guys were running up the stairs from the attacks. Haku has changed his color. It was a green fox shape that added speed. The attacks made on the guys did not reach the target each time. The guys were discussing the sneaky attacks of Randall and his dragon. Shion jumped down from a Haku to the ground. The dart dragon continued to spew flames. A white dragon flew next to it, and Randall was on it. Randall stared ahead, the entire arena surrounded by a cloud of dust and smoke. Randall said that even if the guys hid behind the smoke, he would still see them. Randall manages to dodge the attack. He stared in front of him with a surprised look. Then Randall looked down and saw several huge stakes protruding from the smoke. Randall ordered the barrier to be activated for protection. There were many Zions in the arena, who were holding a bow and arrow in their hands. Zion began to say that Randall would not be able to repel all the attacks. Zion was riding Haku. They were behind the clones. Darkness appeared around Zion. He and Haku discussed that Haku needed to escape from the clones, as Zion had an idea. Randall looked at the clones. He was struck by their resemblance to Zion himself. Randall then ordered the Dark Dragon to make an attack on them. The dragon accumulated magic and rushed to attack the clones of Zion. Magic flashes began to shine in front of the clones, with which the dragon attacked them. The clones began to disappear one by one. As a result, there was only one Haku on the ground, on which Zion was sitting, and a dragon with Randall was hovering in the sky. Randall held a sword in his hands. He looked in front of him and said that Zion had failed to deceive him with such a cheap trick. Shion was sitting astride Haku. A magic clod appeared in his hand, from which sparks emanated. Sion started saying that he was waiting for Randall to destroy all his clones. Randall was greatly surprised to hear Sion's words. Zion was looking up, and there was a magic clot in his hand. A lot of his clones appear next to Zion again. Then he raised his hands, and there was a magic clot in them. The next moment, a bow appears in Sion's hand, and he says that when attacking his clones, he used energy absorption magic. Sion was riding Haku. They rushed forward, and the Dark Dragon rushed to meet them. Zion raised his hand and conjured a magic arrow. He began aiming at the dragon with a bow. Zion shot a magic arrow upwards. In the next instant, the Dark Dragon was struck by many magical arrows. The arrows hit not only the dragon, but also Randall's assistants. Randall watched in horror as the Dark Dragon fell to the ground. Zion conjured another arrow and started aiming. A large stream of magic arrows flew towards the White Dragon and Randall. The stels pierced the White Dragon in several places, and it began to fall. Randall held the sword in front of him and thought that he would not be able to escape. The White Dragon was all wounded. He let out a sickening howl and finally collapsed on the ground. When he reached the ground, clouds of dust rose into the air. Randall was lying on the ground next to the dragon and calling names. Randall turns to the side from where Haku and Zion were running at him. Zion strikes with his sword. Randall deflects Zion's blow with his sword. Then Randall falls back, and Zion jumps off Haku and swings at Randall in a jump. Zion finds himself riding Randall, their swords joined. Zion said that now their battle has come and no one will interfere with them. Randall shoved Zion away with his sword. Then he got to his feet and said that he foresaw the future, and Zion's attacks were slow. Randall's eye shone with a magical symbol, and in the next instant, Zion manages to strike in front of Randall. Zion hit Randall's eyes, and he started screaming in pain. He was sitting on his knees and dropped his weapon. Randall covered his eyes with his hands. Zion was standing next to him. He began to say that the source of Randall's power was the eyes. Now they are gone. Now he will not be able to use the force. Blood was dripping from Randall's face. Randall held his hand to his face and said that why couldn't he predict Zion's attack? Zion stood in front of him and said that he was just a little faster than Randall's foresight power. Randall held his face with his hands and listened to Zion's words that Randall relied too much on his strength and did not notice such a simple attack. Zion held a sword in front of him that shone. He went on to say that the true power is at the tip of the sword. Randall couldn't read it. Randall was on his knees and holding his face with his hand. He said that he had not stopped being a hero. Zion sheathed his sword and said that Randall would have to learn to live like this. He only took his eyesight away from him. Zion started to walk away from Randall up the stairs. Shinon and Haku were outside. They were not far from the arena. Then they found themselves in the forest. All the way they discussed that no one trusted Randall, and now he would not wash away working with the chains of the god of death. Zion found himself in a black background. He remembered Randall sitting among the rubble and said that his eyes were everything to him. But now his time of heroism was over. Haku walked behind Shion. Zion's hair was developing. He began to straighten it with his hand. Then Zion said that he would live in this world and follow the call of his heart. Haku smiled and said it was wonderful. Shion held up his finger. Then Haku came up to him. They took a closer look. The guys discussed that they should collect all the magic stones to make this world a better place. Haku's paw and Shion's hand joined. The guys ended up in the guild building. A girl stood in front of them. The girl coughed and asked in surprise that the guys were really leaving today. Haku and Shion were greatly surprised by the girl's reaction. The guildmaster appears behind her. She was smiling. Then Lily ran up and hugged the guildmaster. Zion looked at the girls who were discussing what they should still try. Maybe the guys would succeed. Lily wiped her reddened face with her hand. Then she hid her hands behind her back and said that she was sure that the guys would succeed. Then Lily held out a small bag to Zion, who was very surprised by her action. Lily held a bag in front of her and said that she had made these cookies herself and would pray for the children's health in the future. Zion took the liver and thanked Lily for it. A girl stood in front of Zion. They discussed that the girls would be waiting for the guys to visit. Shine was standing next to Haku. The guys were on the street. They noticed some kind of crowd of people. The man raised his hand up. There was a ring on his index finger, and said that this ring was proof that he was a hero. Sion and Haku looked in front of them. They remembered Ragdil kneeling. Sion said that heroes cannot give up a duel and are often hunted to wait for the hero to be seriously injured in order to take away his power. A crowd of people was making noise on the street. Sion looked at Haku, then turned around and started walking. The guys discussed that from now on they need to be more careful, since they can also be watched. The guys looked at the clouds passing in front of them. The events begin in the city of Rotor, which is the capital of the state. Zion stood with his hands at the bottom. A huge monster like a monkey was rushing at him. Zion grabs his paw and throws him over himself. The guests end up on the ground. Zion stands in front of a monster that lies on the ground with its arms outstretched in different directions. There's a crowd of people standing around them. The winner of the fight turns out to be Zion. He takes a basket from the table. There were 30 potions in the basket. Shion looks at the basket and says that he and Haku cannot use restorative magic. Zion waved goodbye to the monster in the audience. Then he sped off. The audience was shocked by the gorilla's loss. There are several plates of food on the table and a goblet that was decorated with stones. Zion and Haku began to eat. Haku's muzzle was covered in crumbs. They discussed the history of the city and the development of commercial fishing in it. A man with a towel on his arm came up to the guy's table. He asked if they liked all the food. Zion replied that all the food is delicious and the residents of the city are very friendly. He intends to stay in this city. The man looked back at the noisy company, who were also sitting and eating. He said that humans and beastmen are friends and help each other here, but lately the relationship has started to deteriorate. Zion found himself against a dark background. He was surprised to hear the man's words. Haku continued to eat from the plate. Zion listened to the man. He said that he did not advise to appear on the streets of the city at night. Haku ate and enjoyed the meal. Zion looked at the man and thanked him for his advice. Haku sat next to me and chewed. The guys left the refectory. Shion began to comb Haku's fur. They didn't remember seeing holes in the ground on the streets. The guys discussed that it is forbidden to use magic in the city. And it is strange. The dents on the streets were left by strong magic. Haku put his head on his paws. Zion continued to stroke him. Then Smog took a weapon and put on his cloak and disappeared into the portal. While he thought that he was wondering what was going on in the city, he should find out this secret. Zion appears from a portal on a city street that was covered in fog. Zion walked through the city and reflected that the situation in the city was strange. It was not too dark on the street yet, but there were no souls on the street anymore. Then Silm hears his name being called behind him. Several soldiers approached Zion. There was fog all over the street. The men said that Zion should not go outside, as many ogres appeared on the streets. Zion asked in surprise how such a thing could happen. The men stood in front of Zion, surrounded by fog. The men began to say that the fog appeared a few months ago. Then the ogres appeared. Then Zion turns around at someone's scream. A girl in a dress was sitting on the ground and calling for help. A huge monster with horns stood over her. He joined his clawed paws together, and with a scream, brought down a blow on the defenseless girl. The next moment, Sior turns out to be in front of the girl. He climbs out of his portal and reflects the blow of a large monster with his sword. The girl was behind Zion. She was cowering in fear. Zion held back the ogre's paws with his sword. Then he shouted to the soldiers that they should take the girl to safety as soon as possible. Then Silm looked at the monster and said that he had never seen an ogre of this color before. Steam was coming out of the ogre's nose. In the next instant, Silas began to strike at the monster. One of the gifts reached the ogre and cut it. The ogre growled in pain, but his wound healed after a moment. Zion stared at the ogre in confusion and wondered how his wound could heal so quickly. Oro put his paws to his head and began to growl. Then a magical aura began to appear around him, and bright flashes of light began to appear from his mouth. Zion held his sword out in front of him and thought that this ogre was too stupid. He moved as if Zion wasn't here, but there was something scary about such a fast regeneration. Then the ogre began to spew fire from its mouth. The fireball hit the ground. Zion managed to jump aside, froze from the impact, flew into the air. Zion decided to launch an attack. He rushed forward and thought that he needed to chop off the horns of the ogre. After that, he would weaken. Smog's plan succeeded. The ogre's horns fell. The ogre opened its mouth with sharp fangs and began to scream. He fell to the ground, then clutched his head and began to say something unintelligible. Zion made out the words and repeated the word Karina after the ogre. Without thinking twice, Zion approached the monster and swung his sword. Then the girl in the dress asked Zion to stop. The girl was being held by soldiers, and she tearfully begged not to deal with the ogre. Zion was caught in place, holding a sword over him. Everything was shrouded in fog. Zion turned to the girl. He didn't understand what she meant. The ogre was holding his head with one paw. He got up and ran screaming. The ogre was running into an opening that was in a high wall. Zion will go to the girl in the dress. He held out his hand to her and said that she should tell him what she meant when she stopped Zion. The girl began to cry violently and said that the monster called her by name. He is actually her boyfriend. A soldier approached the guys and said that this was the 10th incident in 2 months when beastmen turned into ogres. Zion stared ahead, his brows furrowed. Fog and debris surrounded him. Zion thought that the followers of the Demon King could reincarnate. Zion should learn more about what was happening in this city. Zion looked at the soldier and the girl and said that it was possible to reverse the transformation process. The girl was crying, and the soldier replied that the king was dealing with this issue, but they had not yet found a way out of this situation. The girl covered her face with her hands and said that if you deal with her boyfriend, then the reverse transformation will be impossible. Zion looked at the girl plaintively. The soldiers began to take the girl away. The remaining soldier said that there is a lake near the city where the goddess Flora lives. Perhaps she can help. The man imagined the silhouette of a girl with long hair. On the contrary, Zion was a soldier. He said that Zion is a good swordsman. The king wants to summon heroes to protect the city. Maybe Zion will hear this call and join. Zion replied that he would think about the offer. The guys found themselves in the forest, not far from the mountains. Zion rode Haku. They discussed that about 200 years ago the events were similar. Zion rode on horseback and recalled the events of yesterday as he searched for the source of magical power. An unusual atmosphere appeared around Zion and Haku. Zion said that he thinks that demons are involved in what is happening, but first they need to find the source of magic. Zion got off the Haku. He said that there was a source of mania somewhere nearby. The guys saw a crowd of people standing by the water. The guys approached the people. A girl turned to them and said that they had come to the lake so that the goddess would listen to their prayers. Zion was surprised, as a soldier had told him about it earlier. Shion and Haku stood behind the people. They looked at the sky, where magic circles began to appear. A girl in a dress appears from the circle. The girl spread her arms to the side. She hovered in the air above the people. When people saw the girl, they fell to the ground and began to say that they were asking the goddess for help. Shion and Haku were looking up. A girl with long hair and an ornament on her head was floating in the air. The guys were silently looking at the girl. The rest of the people were lying on the ground. The girl said that she doesn't like stubborn people. Zion thanked her and then opened his eyes wide. He saw something glowing in the girl's chest area. The guys stared in front of them in surprise. The girl leaned her hand against her chest and said that her name was Athena. She would like to chat with the guys. The guys looked at each other. Haku said that Zion shows disrespect when he looks at people so closely. Zion replied that he didn't do that. Zion looked at the girl and said that she was the source of this magic. Haku looked at Shion in surprise. Athena came down to the ground. A girl with braided hair was sitting in front of her. Zion went to the water and said that he was seeing the goddess for the first time. Athena was floating in the air. She folded her arms under her chest and said that she was a fairy who used to be a human. Shion was surprised. Then he held out the girl's hand and wanted to tell her about the purpose of his and Haku's visit to the lake. The girl interrupted Shion and said that the guys were looking for a magic crystal. The girl began to fumble with her hand in her clothes, and the lone in her hand turned out to be a small, dark-colored crystal. Zion held onto his cloak and said that he had lost this crystal earlier, and now he would like to get it back. The girl held the crystal in her hands. She looked at it and began to say that she was ready to give the crystal to Zion, only on one condition. Zion listened to her attentively. The girl was sitting on a rock. She was holding a stone in her hand and continued to say that she has a best friend who is a war hero. Zion should lead her to the lake. Shion and Haku stood next to each other and listened attentively to the girl's request. The guys found themselves in the city. They were walking along a deserted street. Haku started to look around, and Shion was standing in front of him. The guys discussed that they had arrived in the city where Athena's friend lives. Beads of sweat appeared on Zion's face. He turned to Haku and said that he had traveled with this girl before. Haku walked beside him and looked at Shion. Then the guys heard a cry for help. The man was lying on the ground and pointing at the sky. He shouted that there was a huge eagle in the sky, and it was flying right at them. The eagle flew straight at defenseless people. Zion got into a fighting pose and conjured a magic shield in front of him, with which he stopped the huge eagle. Haku stood behind Shion and was ready to make an attack. Shion held the magic shield in front of him. Haku stood behind him. The guys were surprised as soon as they heard the voice of a man, who said that the guys should stop, since the eagle cannot be injured. The stranger began to conjure. Zion put away his magic shield. He stared in surprise at the girl who appeared behind him. She enveloped the eagle with her water magic. Then the girl went towards the huge eagle and held out her hands to him. Then she said that no one would harm the eagle. He should calm down. The girl started hugging the eagle's head, her hair blowing in the wind. The girl praised the obedient eagle and winked. The eagle flew into the sky. The girl approached the residents of the city and said that this bird was not magical, it just needed to be calmed down. The girl turned to the guys with a smile on her face and said that she was grateful to the guys for their assistance. She was not sure that she would have time to save all the residents. The girl looked at Zion in surprise. He started smiling and waving. Then he said she shouldn't thank him. Shion and Haku were very surprised. The girl put her hands to her face, down which tears began to roll. The girl held her hands in the air and said that really Zion was still alive. The girl rushed to the side where Zion was standing. Then she found herself in his embrace. The girl was crying and hugging Zion tightly. Through tears, she said that she was very glad that she had found Zion. The girl hugged Zion tightly and through tears rejoiced at their meeting. She thought that Zion had died after all. Zion took the girl by the shoulders. They looked into each other's eyes and said that they were very happy to see each other. In the next moment, the girl and Zion's faces turned red from embarrassment. They abruptly turned away from each other and said once again that they were glad to see each other. Haku was watching what was happening. Haku approached the guys, and Zion introduced Haku to the girl. The girl put her hands together and said that Haku was cool, and she is surprised that there is such a strong beast with Zion. The girl smiled and said that her name was Arya Meachlet, and she was glad to meet Haku. Haku smiled back and was also glad to meet you. Zion held out his hand to Arya and said that the goddess Athena was waiting for her at the Flora Spring. Would Arya agree to go with them to the spring? Arya agreed to Zion's request. Shion stroked Haku, who blushed with embarrassment. Arya and Zion ended up riding Haku. Haku warned the guys to hold on tight. Arya hugged Zion tightly the next moment and said she was sorry for that. Shinon looked at Haku and said that if he was shaking too much, it was better not to run so fast. Haku looked at Sion accusingly and thought that Sion did not understand him at all. After a while, the guys found themselves at the source. They were standing on the ground, and the fairy was floating in the air. The girls joined hands and joyfully began to jump. Shion and Haku watched the girls with reddened faces. Zion looked in front of him and said that the last time he saw Arya, she was just a child. Now she has become such an adult. The fairy looked at Arya. Then she closed her eyes and said that she called Arya here because of the situation of turning beastmen into ogres. The guys listened attentively to the fairy. Arya started saying that the fairy was talking about holy water, which relieves the effect of turning into zombies and diseases. It should help that the transformation happened recently. Arya imagined a beautiful bottle with liquid inside. The girls began to discuss that they really want to help people in trouble. The fairy took Arya's hands and smiled. Zion stood behind Arya. Arya looked in front of her and said that she only falls under one person. She borrowed the will of the hero from Zion. Arya remembered when she was a child. Then, 2 swords with different coats of arms and 2 rulers shaking hands in honor of the truce. Arya remembered the masked man who started conjuring a magic ball in his hand. It was an evil hero of darkness who could single-handedly defeat an entire country, and in the end she had to put up with it. Arya remembered the reconciliation ceremony. A lot of people were in the hall as a huge 3-headed dog appeared in front of them. Each head had a large mouth that was full of sharp teeth. Little Arya conjured a shield. She was trying to save people from this monster. A 3-headed monster loomed over little Arya. Arya began to scream and call for help. A huge mouth with fangs hung over her. Out of fear, she put her hands in front of her. Arya opened her eyes and saw a robed hero in front of her who defeated a 3-headed monster. It was the hero of darkness. The dark hero, wearing a mask, turned around and walked up to little Arya. Then he took off his mask and said that it was over, and Arya could already go back to her mom. Arya looked at Zion, her eyes full of tears. Zion stroked little Arya's head. Then they started fighting together. Zion was 7 years older than Arya, and he had a woman he loved. Arya imagined a girl with long hair standing with her back to her. Then Arya remembered how Zion was kneeling at the coffin of his beloved. Arya wanted to help Zion, but he left her. 5 years have passed since this incident. She was walking down the street and heard a man talking that Zion was dead. She remembered Zion, who stood on the ground with many swords sticking out of it. Arya put her hands to her face. She didn't believe the rumors were true. Arya couldn't believe in Zion's death and decided to leave the city. Arya leaned her arms against her chest and said that she was very glad to meet Zion alive. The fairy looked at Zion. Haku closed his eyes and thought that Arya had continued to love Zion with all her heart all this time. Zion was standing behind Arya. He didn't understand what Arya liked. Fairy and Haku frowned. They did not understand how Zion could be so thick-headed. The fairy smiled and showed the crystal. Then she put it in Zion's hand and said that since Zion had fulfilled his promise, she would return the crystal to him. A magical aura formed around Zion. Zion's eyes glittered, and he thought that the return of the crystal was quite pleasant. He felt his magic had increased. Haku approached the guys, and they began to discuss that Zion should try out the returned power. The guys found themselves on the street of the city. There was fog around them. The guys began to discuss that the villains could use zombie powder. Arya didn't believe that this powder could be used in such a large area. Zion held up his finger and said that the villains were using wind currents to spray the powder. They would have to figure out the place of spraying. But now, the main thing was to deal with the ogres. Arya was holding a bottle of holy water, which was supposed to help. Haku forces to the ground. The guys were determined to find yesterday's ogre who had escaped. The guys turned out to be riding Haku. They were discussing that if demons were behind these, then what they wanted to achieve. Arya held on to Zion. He said that the demons wanted to put the beastmen and humans at odds. Haku stopped, and the guys saw an ogre lying on the ground in front of them. The ogre was eating animal meat. He noticed the guys. Zion frowned and said that both horns were broken off. Whether it was exactly yesterday's ogre. Arya looked at the ogre and doubted that it was possible to restore its original appearance. Zion was sure of it. He jumped off the Haku. Arya started conjuring Vola's mania and said she could immobilize the ogre. Shion put his hand on the sword and said that Haku should help Arya. Zion took the sword in his hand and began to walk towards the ogre. He began to cast spells and copies of Zion appeared from the ground. Zion and his copies rushed to attack. The ogre screamed and rushed to attack in response. The ogre hit the ground. Zion and his copies managed to dodge. The ogre began to growl and Zion was behind him. Smoke began to come out of the ogre's mouth. He screamed loudly and attacked Zion. Copies of Zion activated magic shields. Zion held the shield and thought that the ogre had intelligence. The ogre spread its paws and was ready to strike. Arya was enveloped in a magical aura. She screamed that she was ready to launch an attack. Zion looked at Arya and said she could act. There was an ogre standing next to Zion. Arya began to pronounce magic words. Magical blues with crystals in the form of flowers appeared around her. Magic circles appeared in front of Arya, from which crystals began to fly out. The ogre was waist-deep in crystals. The ogre started viciously hitting the crystals, and Arya said that the ogre would not be able to free himself. Haku rushed to attack. He grabbed the ogre by the paw. Zion put out his hand and, with the help of enchanted tentacles, grabbed the ogre's second paw. The ogre was completely immobilized. Zion told Arya that she could attack. Arya rushed at the ogre and kicked him. The ogre screamed in pain. Then Arya threw the contents of the bottle into the ogre's mouth. The ogre swallowed everything and grabbed his throat. The guys were watching the ogre. The ogre held his throat and screamed loudly. Arya held an empty bottle in her hands and prayed that everything would work. The ogre began to smoke. His eyes bulged, and he gradually began to transform into his original form. A beastman appeared in front of the guys. The guys exchanged glances and were happy for the successful operation. The beastman took the hands of the girl in the dress. They were glad to see each other. Zion was talking to the soldier about how if another ogre appeared, they should immediately tell Zion about it. Arya stood next to Haku and rejoiced at the reunion of the lovers. Arya and Haku were discussing the topic of love. Arya looked at Haku and then took him by the tail. Arya and Haku spoke words of love and gratitude to each other. Zion came up to the guys. He raised his hand and said that he was sorry for the wait and offered Arya to spend the night in a separate room. Arya looked at Zion and then she turned her back on him. Then she said she didn't mind spending the night with the guys. Zion agreed. Zion walked up to Arya and started stroking her head. Then he said that Arya was brilliant today. Arya blushed at Zion's word. Haku was standing next to me and smiling. The guys were in the house. They were sitting at the table and eating. They discussed that yesterday she was walking without a mask, and as a hero, no one recognized her. Zion held a fork and said not to get upset. Arya agreed with Zion. Haku's paws were on the table, and he said that there should be a hero of weapons in the city. But there is none. There were people sitting behind Zion. He remembered the man who bowed before the ruler. His servants stood next to him. Zion put his hand to his face and thought that the kingdom was in danger, but the heroes continued to be absent. Arya agreed with Zion's words. A soldier approached the guys and addressed Zion. 2 soldiers were already standing in front of Zion. The man with the beard said that Zion was summoned by the king, and Zion's friends should go with them. The guys ended up in Roden Castle. They stood in front of the king and queen. Then they bowed before the ruler. The queen was sitting with the king. He said that he had heard from the soldiers about the exploits of Zion. Zion started to get up from his knees and introduced his friends. Arya had her hand on her chest, and Zion was telling the king about her. The king was startled when he heard that Arya was a water hero. She shouldn't be in the kingdom. Arya stood up and said that she was happy to accompany Zion and was ready to help those in need. Arya blushed, as she was delighted at Zion's words that she was his comrade. The king put his hand to his face and coughed. The yard with the king turned out to be a white figure who said that Zion was just a wanderer who had a top-level pet with him. These words made Zion very angry. A man in white stood next to the king. Zion looked at him. He felt that a strong aura emanated from him, and he wondered who this man was. The eyes of Zion and the stranger met. The king stood up. Then he held out his hand in front of him and said that he intended to find the source of the miasma. If there were demons or magical beasts behind it, then he should destroy them. Whether Zion was ready to join the king. Zion was on his knees. The king stood in front of the guys. He asked them for help. The boys continued to kneel and listen to the king's speech. Zion was on one knee. Then he got up and said that it had been a long time since the ogre incident. Was the king gathering an army? The man in white smiled and looked at the king, and the king also looked back at him. Then the king clenched his hand into a fist and said that the soldiers had found the source of the miasma, but they had not yet managed to do anything. The hero of the weapon, Claire, returned from the campaign. Claire approached the guys. He held out his hand to Zion. Then he said he was glad to meet Zion. Then Claire looked at Haku and said that he was glad to meet the magic wolf too. Haku got angry because he is a fox, not a wolf. Claire was standing next to Zion. Zion asked him who all these people were. Claire looked at the people and said that they were all members of his group. There were 30 of them in total. Men and women of different ages looked towards the guys. The king began to say that he was asking for help from Zion, since recently the enemy has been seeking enmity between humans and beastmen. Arya and Haku were standing next to Shion, and Shion enthusiastically said that he was ready to join the team, just as they wanted to move out today. The king smiled and thanked Zion for his cooperation. The king was sitting at a table with a map on it. There were heroes standing around the table. The king said that as they had planned, the operation would begin tonight. The participants in the operation were Claire's group, Zion's group, and 30 soldiers from the elite squad. The man in the helmet held out his hand to Zion and said that he was the commander of the soldiers. Zion looked at the man's hand and shook it. Then something caught Zion's attention. The commander of the soldiers began to squeeze Zion's hand tightly. Zion looked at him and thought that the man was behaving strangely. But Zion did not intend to respond to provocations, but still it was necessary to show the man a real strong handshake. Zion smiled and said he was glad to meet you. The next moment, the man fell to the floor and started screaming. Zion stood and did not let go of the man's hand. Claire was standing next to the king. The king asked what happened to the guys. The commander of the soldiers shouted in panic that Zion should immediately let go of his hand. Zion smiled and let go of the commander's hand, apologizing for it. Claire went up to the commander and tried to help him stand up. Claire approached the soldier and asked if Zion was really strong. The commander looked at Zion, with Arya standing next to him. Then he said that Zion is very strong. This force is too big for an ordinary person. Claire squinted and said it might be interesting. Claire looked at the king and said that if someone big appeared, the soldiers would have to report to them. The king agreed. Claire and another man leaned their hand against their chest and glued themselves. Zion, Arya, and Haku started to leave. Claire caught up with them and said with a smile on his face that if Sion could keep him company, Claire wanted to show Sion one magic item in his arsenal. Sion agreed. The guys found themselves in an arena with an iron cage in the middle of it. The cage was full of monsters with wings. Claire held a bow in his hands and started saying that he intended to try out a magic bow on these monsters. Sion looked at the cage and said that they were winged goblins. Claire had already prepared for archery. Claire raised his hand and gave the command to release the goblins. The guys stood next to each other and carefully watched what was happening. The cage opened, and several goblins appeared in the air. Claire held a bow in his hand and watched the goblins fly towards him. The goblins had sharp fangs on their claws. They flew at Claire and growled loudly. Claire pulled a bowstring and 4 arrows appeared in his hand. In the next instant, magic arrows flew towards the goblins. The arrows were blessed with magical energy. They changed their trajectory and began to crash into the goblins' bodies. Sion and Arya were looking up, and she said that the arrows could really come back. The arrows pierced all the monsters. Defeated by the magical arrows, the monsters collapsed to the ground next to Claire, who was standing and holding a bow in his hands. The king knocked Claire down for his skills. Claire leaned his hand against his chest and bent down. Then he raised the magic bow up and said that the power of the magic bow was that all his targets would eventually be defeated. The guys were looking at Claire. Xianan said that Claire fired several arrows at once. This magic item is really not bad. Claire smiled maliciously and looked at Xion. Claire went up to Xion and said that there was only one monster left. Maybe he wanted to deal with him. Xion frowned and thought that Claire was really a good strategist. Standing in front of Xion was Claire, who was holding a magic bow in his hands. Xion stood in the arena and thought that Claire had not only decided to show his weapon, but also to compete in strength. Now the sun is high. This is not good for the Master of Darkness. Xion closed his eyes and replied that it would be messy to fight someone whose abilities you don't know. Claire smiled and said he was glad that Xion understood him. Xion walked past Claire. Arya and Haku stood nearby and started cheering on Sione. Xion raised his hand up and thanked the guys for their support. The monster appeared in the sky above the iron cage. Xion was looking up at the monster. The monster began to accelerate and rushed to attack Xion. Xion stood motionless. Xion began to utter magical owls and tentacles appeared from the ground, which eventually grabbed a monster with wings in the air. Claire looked up in fright and thought that even in the sunlight, Xion was using dark magic at such a high level. Tentacles held the monster, who started growling. In the next instant, one of the tentacles tore off the monster's head. The monster's body fell next to Xion, who was holding his hand in the air. And the monster's head landed next to Claire, who was holding a magic bow. There was a monster's head lying on the ground next to Claire. Claire began to say that he was praising Xion for his abilities. At such a pace, he would surpass the Hero of Darkness axe. Xion replied that they should leave at this point. Claire said goodbye to the guys. Arya and Haku came up to Sione. Arya said that Claire is quite strong. He is good with a bow. Haku and Shion turned around. They were discussing that it was strange that Claire needed a squad of 30 people. There were many horsemen on horseback in front of the high gate. Claire started shouting that they would stop the cause of the miasma and bring peace to the city. Then Claire and the others began to raise their weapons up and shout enthusiastically. The guys were walking in a column along the road. Xion was riding Haku, with Arya and Claire riding behind him. They discussed that there would be ruins ahead where the enemy might be waiting for them. Claire held the reins and said he didn't believe he was among a lot of heroes right now, and he was very happy about it. Arya was riding next to them, and she said that only time would tell if they were lucky or not. Claire looked at Arya and then put his hand on his chest. Then he said that Arya was beautiful and he would like her to join his group. Arya looked at Claire and refused his request. Arya looked up at the sky. Her face turned red, and she said that she had someone in mind. He was gorgeous. He had dark hair. He was incredibly strong. Arya looked at Claire and said with a smile that she loved this man. The guys looked at her in surprise. Shion and Haku approached Arya and asked her to stop. She looked at the guys in surprise. Claire smiled nervously and said that the person Arya loves is really lucky. A soldier on horseback was rushing towards the guys. He was shouting that there was a purple ogre right ahead. Zion was riding Haku. They were listening to the soldier's report. Claire began to say that, judging by the color of the ogre, it was a former beast man. Arya was worried. Zion started saying that they have holy water that can restore the ogre's normal appearance. Claire pointed to the side and started shouting that the squad should stand in a row, as the ogre was already on the way. Arya and Zion were standing next to Claire. There were 9 purple ogres in front of the squad. They were huge. Claire was panicking about so many monsters. The monsters had sharp horns on their heads, and smoke was coming from their mouths. The guys looked in front of them and thought that the amount of holy water should be enough for everyone, but it would be difficult to cure them all. Claire began to say that he had made this decision with difficulty, but monsters should not be left alive. In the next instant, the ogres jumped up and landed at the column of soldiers. They growled angrily. The soldiers were confused and scared. Haku frowned. Then he transformed into a green fox and rushed to attack the ogre. He made several attacks on the ogres, knocking them down. Gusts of wind hit the ogres. They began to cover their faces with their paws. Claire began giving orders to his soldiers. Then he looked straight ahead with a serious expression on his face. Claire rode up to Sine and said that Haku was doing a great job. Sine looked at Claire and said that Haku still has a lot of abilities. He is not a bit inferior in strength to Sion and Arya. Zion looked at Claire and said he had to let them act on their own. Claire frowned and looked at Zion. Claire looked at the huge and furious monsters. Then he said that how would Zion be able to deal with all these monsters on his own? Zion looked at Claire with a raw expression on his face and begged him to trust them. Arya came up to Claire and asked her to trust them. Claire stared at Arya in surprise. Then he looked at Zion and said that the guys have 5 minutes. As soon as the time runs out, he will give the order to destroy the monsters. Claire ordered the horsemen to stop the attack. Zion thanked Claire for his trust. Zion began to conjure. Arya stood behind him and was ready to help. Haku was standing nearby. The guys were discussing an action plan to save the beastmen. The enraged monsters were looking at the guys. Zion was serious about winning at the guys. Zion was serious about winning. Zion looked at Arya and said that she would need to freeze as many ogres as possible, and he would stop the upper part of the ogres with tentacles. Arya agreed with Zion. Claire looked at the angry ogres. He ordered the soldiers to protect the guys. The ogres started making loud noises. Their eyes shone brightly, and the ogres began to kick off the ground with their feet to make an attack. One of the ogres landed next to Zion and Arya. Haku charged to knock down the ogre. Arya praised Haku for the successful attack. Arya began to conjure, and gradually the legs of the ogres, up to the torso, were covered with an icy crust. Steam came out of the soldiers' mouths, and it became very cold around them. Zion held out his hand in front of him. A magical aura appeared around him. He summoned tentacles that finally immobilized the ogres. Zion shouted that they had immobilized 5 ogres. Arya was holding holy water in her hands and asked Claire to help her. He jumped off his horse and, together with Arya, began to give the bound ogres holy water. Arya looked at the fluttering ogres. She said that they should return to their former appearance. Zion and Claire stood and watched intently. The ogres' eyes began to glow, and they all began to shout loudly. Arya looked at the ogres and did not understand why they did not regain their former appearance. The ogres' eyes began to glow. Hara was standing next to Arya. He asked if there was a possibility that too much time had passed. Sion gritted his teeth and nervously thought that most likely these ogres were controlled by someone. The guys stood in front of the ogres. They looked at each other and began to discuss that demons were to blame for this incident. Claire took up his sword. He had 2 swords in his hands. Then he said that the soldiers should destroy the ogres. The soldiers were armed and they launched an offensive against the immobilized ogres. Claire watched the scene carefully. He then attacked the ogres, and in the next instant, the ogres' heads were separated from their bodies. The rest of the ogres were overpowered by the soldiers. Zion was watching what was happening. He was indignant. Then Claire raised his sword arm to the side and started shouting that the soldiers should deal with the rest of the ogres. Zion grabbed his shoulder and told the soldiers and Claire to stop. Claire said that Zion really wants to give these ogres holy water. It didn't work with the previous ones. Zion agreed, then their eyes met. Claire turned around and gave his consent for Zion to act. Zion thanked him. Arya started conjuring again. Haku was standing next to her and helping her. The remaining ogres began to be covered with frost. Zion and Claire rushed to the ogres. They gave them holy water to drink. The holy water didn't work on these ogres either. The soldiers began to attack the ogres. Claire watched in horror. Claire stood in front of the ogre. He readied his swords to strike, but was stopped by Zion and asked to wait a little longer. Zion spread his arms to the side and said that the ogre should identify himself. The ogre held his head and said the word Gi. Zion began to shout that Gi should return to his appearance, since he is human. The ogre's eyes began to glow. The ogre held his head with his hands, and Zion continued to shout that Gi should return home, as they were waiting for him there. Gradually, the ogre's face began to transform. A beast man appeared in front of the guys. He held his head with his hands and called his name. Claire stared in front of him in surprise and thought that the events taking place were incredible. The onlooker continued to shout his name. Then he found himself in Zion's arms. Arya, Haku, the soldiers, and Claire began to rejoice at Zion's victory. Arya and Haru came up to Xian. She began to praise him for his victory. Zion looked at the guys and said that he won only because of the support of the guys, and he is glad that at least one beastman was helped by holy water. Claire came up to the guys and said that the soldiers would escort Guy to the city. The guys don't have to worry about it. But Claire has another conversation with the guys. Claire started saying that because of Zion's antics, everyone was in great danger. Claire couldn't turn a blind eye to it. A soldier was sitting next to him with a torch. Arya and Haku began to defend and justify Zion's actions. Zion appeared in front of the guys. He raised his hand and said that he was grateful to the guys for their support and they no longer needed to worry. Zion then knelt in front of Claire and apologized for his actions. Claire smiled and asked Zion to get up. Claire closed his eyes. An unusual aura enveloped him, and he said that he too had gone too far. But these events reminded him of old times. Then Claire turned around and started to leave. He suggested we move on. The guys ended up at the former city of Rotor, where only ruins remained. Claire was riding, and Arya was next to him. He said that in this city, in ancient times, terminally ill people were brought in. Arya began to shake with fear. Claire continued to tell the creepy stories that were associated with this city. Arya pressed her hands to herself and said that she did not like such stories. Shion and Haku began to calm Arya down with a smile. The commander appeared in front of Claire. The commander looked at Claire and said that he had noticed someone at the entrance to the ruins. The torch was burning with a bright flame. A magic sphere appeared in Sion's hand, and he began to say that there was a monster with a huge mana at the entrance. Claire was riding a horse, and he said they had to find the source of this magic. Sion looked at Claire and offered to defeat the monster with his own efforts. Claire got off his horse and said it was their turn to prove themselves. Claire stared ahead and smiled. A huge monster was coming at the guys from the ruins. Instead of a head, it had a skull, and the whole body was in armor. The monster was armed with a huge sword. Claire's squad was a little scared. He grabbed both swords himself. Claire's cloak fluttered in the wind. He began to smile and said that he would now show everyone what they had never seen. Claire stared ahead. He was determined. Claire armed himself with swords and rushed to attack the monster. He thought that he would never forget when the monsters dealt with his childhood friend. Just then he vowed to avenge it. The monster struck with his sword but missed, and Claire managed to dodge. Claire then made another hit on the monster and left deep cuts on the monster's chest guard. Claire landed on the ground. There were people from his squad around him. He ordered everyone to start a fight. Claire called the number 3. Several people from his squad began to cast spells, and Claire had a magic staff with protection in his hands, with which he cut the monster's sword into 2 pieces. Claire threw away the weapon and started saying that 7 were archers, 2 were capture. The rays fired arrows into the monster's face, then used chains to bind the monster's hands. A large and sharp weapon appeared in Claire's hands. Claire rushed into the attack and shouted that the monster did not have long to live. The next moment, Claire pierces through the monster's body. Claire landed on the ground behind the monster. The monster began to growl loudly. He had almost nothing left of his head. Then he collapsed to the ground. A large column of dust rose into the air. Claire turned around and said he seemed to be overdoing it. Zion and Haku approached Claire, and they began to praise him for his skills. Claire smiled and said he was flattered by Zion's praise. Then Zion said that Zion called the numbers. These are the types of attack. and Claire timed each attack perfectly. Claire approached the soldier and handed him the weapon. Claire said that he had a lot of weapons, so he needed to get them out in order to eventually use them. There was a wagon nearby that contained these weapons. Zion thanked Claire for his advice. Zion looked at Claire, who was communicating with his subordinates, and he thought that Claire was really a very capable hero. The guys walked with the soldiers through the ruins of the former city. A dense fog enveloped them. The guys were walking and discussing that they were getting closer to the source of the miasma, and a strange smell also appeared around them. The soldiers approached a large puddle of a strange substance. They looked in front of them and were overcome with fear. They saw a strange figure erected in the middle of the city of their human bodies, over which many crows flew. Zion, horrified, said that it was really the tricks of demons. It must have been several days after the death of people. Arya turned away and squeezed her eyes shut. Then she said that you can't do this to dead people. Claire looked in front of him. There were soldiers behind him. He started shouting that everyone should stay calm, as this was a provocation of demons. Beads of sweat appeared on Claire's face. Zion began to conjure and then said that he felt 4 sources of magic in front of him. A thick fog appeared in the air. Claire turned to the soldiers and said they all needed to go. Beads of sweat began to appear on Zion's face. Arya came up to Zion. She put her hand on Zion's back and said that they would definitely take revenge on the monsters for the deaths of these people. Zion frowned and agreed with Arya's words. The guys found themselves in an empty area that was surrounded by fog. They looked up and said they had found the source of the miasma. In front of them sat an ogre toad with an open mouth, from which steam was coming. The guys stood and looked at the monster. They began to discuss that the continent used to be inhabited by such monsters. Someone interrupted the guys' conversation and said that he was tired of waiting for the heroes to appear. There were 4 monsters in the sky behind the guys with wings on their backs. The guys turned around and saw 3 flying demons. They had 10 times more magical power than a human. The demons bared their mouths and looked at the guys. Claire looked up. The demons hovered in the air and began to say that they had been informed that the heroes had moved into the rotor. Claire angrily asked the monsters that they were behind the transformation of people into monsters. The monster replied that it was just a warm-up. Now is the time for them to introduce themselves. The monster with long hair was called Argite. The monster with thick eyebrows was called Tarb, and the smaller monster was called Alton. They were all brothers. All the guys began to look at each other and discuss their further actions. First of all, the guys had to defeat the toad, and the soldiers would attack the demons. The next moment, the toad jumped up and landed next to the people, who began to run in different directions. Argite started laughing loudly and ordered the toad to make an attack. The toad's mouth filled with fire, and she spewed it at the guys. The guys were protected by Haru. For Haru, the flame of this level was nothing. He began to conjure and made an attack against the toad. Haru offered to deal with the toad himself. Zion agreed with him. Claire held a bow in his hands and ordered the archers to shoot arrows at the flying monsters. The arrow fired by Claire scared the monsters. They continued to hover in the air. Then they wrapped themselves in a protective barrier. Claire and his archers shot arrows at the monsters. He thought that he would eventually break through the barriers of the monsters. Argite looked at Claire. Then he said that Claire was really strong, but without his arrows he was nothing. He then ordered his brother Tarb to make an attack. Magic circles began to appear in Tarb's hands, and in the next instant, he unleashed his attack on the archers. The wind picked up, and the rays began to knock down. Claire held the bow in his hands and tried to stand on his feet. He looked up and thought that he would not be able to shoot in such a wind. Monsters mocked people. Tarb continued to cast spells and attack people with his magic circles. Tarb grinned and started calling for a tornado. He was in the air. He was enveloped in magical energy, and tornadoes began to appear around him. Zion looked up with a serious expression on his face. Then he took up his weapon and began to conjure. Zion's magic began to dispel the tornado. The demons, seeing the magic of Zion, were greatly surprised. They were looking at the sword of Zion. Zion said that, unfortunately for the demons, he can also use wind magic. Zion held the sword with both hands, and the wind swept over him. Tar began to conjure and shout that Zion's magic could not be better than his magic. In the next instant, Tar was pierced by several crystals. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Arya conjured and said that the demon did not need to remove the barrier during the attack. Arya held her hand out in front of her and said that monsters should stop underestimating people. Tarb put his hand on one of the crystals. He was furious. The guys stood and looked at the monsters. The monsters continued to hover in the air, Tarb holding his shoulder with his hand. Argyte looked down at the guys and said that he did not expect to meet people stronger than Alair. Argyte gritted his teeth and said that one should pay tribute to the hero of persuasion. Zion looked up in surprise. He did not understand what kind of hero they were talking about. A bell appeared in Argyte's hands. He glared at the bottom, then raised his hand above himself and said that now the guys would enjoy the melody. Argyte held a bell in his hands. Then he put his hand forward and began to ring the bell. The ringing of the bell was heard by all the guys. The soldiers stood in silence and listened to the ringing of the bell. Then the ground began to shake. The next moment, Arya, Claire, and the soldiers grabbed their heads. They covered their ears with their hands, from the bell ringing too much. Argyte held the bell in his hands and said that the sound affects the human brain. Zion began to ask what the hero of persuasion had sold them this thing. Argyte answered Zion's question in the negative. Zion picked up a sword, and Arya stood next to him. Argyte smiled maliciously and said that everything would not be as easy as Zion thought. Their time was up. Zion looked up in surprise. Zion and Arya looked around. They saw how the soldiers started acting strangely, and eventually started fighting each other. Zion and Arya stood back to back. They discussed that the monsters had brainwashed the soldiers with a bell. The monsters ordered the soldiers to deal with Zion and Arya. The next moment, an enraged Claire will attack Zion. Zion repelled Claire's attacks and thought that there was no magic that would dispel the negative effect. Arya had only one bottle of holy water left. Besides, they did not know how long the effect of the bell would last. Arya held her hand out in front of her and began to conjure. Zion and Claire stood side by side. Claire's sword covered in ice crystals from Arya's magic. Claire, in the next instant, falls to the ground. Claire was lying on the ground motionless. All his limbs were frozen by Arya. Soldiers continued to fight around the guys. The guys were discussing that Arya had used the last holy water on Claire, and they needed a plan to help the others. Zion looked in front of him with a serious expression. The next moment he cast a spell and huge black wings grew out of his back. The feathers from the wings began to fly in the air. Zion was floating in the air. He held a sword in one hand and said that monsters would no longer be able to play with other people's lives. Argyte soared above his brothers and looked down. Alon looked away and smiled, and Tarb looked at Zion in horror. Zion looked in front of him. He frowned. His eyes were full of anger. He looked at the monsters and said that they did not have long to live. Arya held out her hand in front of her. Magic circles formed in front of her, from which crystals appeared. She attacked the soldiers and froze them so that they would not harm each other. The soldiers tried to break off the ice with swords. Arya turned around and said that now the soldiers won't be able to move for a while. She looked in front of her and thought that until Zion broke the demon bell, the soldiers would continue to attack each other. Haku was shortened by the fire attacks of the big toad. Haku began to repel the attacks of the toad with his sorcery. He said that he would not allow fire to fall on his allies. The fire that the toad released returned to her. Haku looked at the guys and said that Zion should leave the toad on him, and he himself needed to destroy the bell as soon as possible. Arya looked at the guys. Zion looked in front of him and furiously said that the demons would pay for all the bad things they had done. Zion flew up on his black wings, a sword in his hands. Tarp anxiously shouted that Zion was really going to attack them. Zion was flying at the demons. Alon said that after all, Zion has the element of darkness, since he has black wings. Tarb began to shout that he would easily defeat Zion. Tarb began to shout that he would easily defeat Zion. Tarb put his hand out and began to cast spells to make an attack on Zion. Zion raised his hand up, then put it in front of him, and with the help of a magic sphere, repelled all Tarb's attacks. Tarb frowned. He did not understand how Zion managed to repel his attacks. Zion flew forward. He held up a sword and a sphere in front of him. Zion flew forward. He began to utter magic words menacingly. Then he waved his sword and the attacks flew towards Tarb. All of Zion's attacks hit Tarba. Tarb's body began to disintegrate into pieces and blood flowed from it. Argyte, frightened, called his brother's name. Zion, on his black wings, headed towards the one-eyed Alton. Alton said with a smile that Zion should not be arrogant. Now they will see whose magic will be stronger in the end. Alton held his hands out in front of him, and a magic sphere appeared in them. Alton glared at Zion with one eye. Then he began to cast magic spells. A large, dark blob appeared from the magical sphere of Alton, which headed towards Zion, who was floating in the air. Zion finds himself completely in the black sphere. Alton, with a smile on his face, said that in this dark space, the 5 senses of Zion will be sealed. There is no way out of the dark space. Strange sounds began to emanate from the sphere. The next moment, Zion puts his hand aside and the magic sphere disappears. Zion held a sword in his hand. Alton, seeing Zion freed, is greatly surprised. He does not understand how Zion was able to free himself. Zion continued to hover in the air. He looked at the demons and began to shout that darkness. The magic that Alton conjured is too weak. Zion's magic is stronger, which is why he destroyed Alton's darkness so easily. Zion held out his hand in front of him and cast a spell. Many holes appeared in front of him, from which tentacles began to fly out. Alton put up a shield in front of him, but the tentacles destroyed it and pierced Alton through. Argyth watched as Zion hovered in the air, and Alton began to fall to the ground. Argyth said fearfully that Zion was just a human being. Zion turned to Argyth and said it didn't matter. Argyth hovered over Zion and said that the guys would not stop him from destroying the rotor. After that, he would become one of the 10 demon generals. Zion looked at Argyth and said that at the entrance to the city, the guys saw a lot of dead people. Zion looked at Argyth and asked that all those people were killed by the demon brothers. Argyth began to smile maliciously and answered Zion's question positively. Zion glared up at Argyth. Argyth glared at Zion and said that Zion should tell him where he got such power. Did Zion learn the magic of darkness from the hero axe? Zion fell silent. Then Zion spread his wings. He held a sword in his hand and said that why would he learn magic from axe if he was Axe? Zion glared at Argyth and said that his real name was Zion. Ask. Argyth asked fearfully that Zion was definitely not joking. Zion replied that Argyth was not fit to replace the General of Darkness, whom Zion had dealt with 2 months ago. Argyth got very angry because of Zion's words and started attacking him. Zion raised his hand in front of him and began to conjure. Zion stopped, and several dark balls appeared in front of him, one of which he held in his hand. Zion looked in front of him and said that he intended to return the dark balls that had consumed the fire to the owner. And the next moment, Zion begins to conjure. Argyth holds out his hand in front of him and casts a spell, after which a round magic shield appears in front of him. Argyth then began to viciously say that whether Zion was a hero or someone else, he was still a human being and could not be compared to Argyth. Argyth raises his hands up and begins to conjure. A magic blob appears above him. Argyth starts shouting that Zion should run while he can. An evil smile appears on Argyth's face and says that his strongest magic must catch up and burn all his enemies. A light appears over Argyth. Zion hovers in the air nearby and watches Argyth's actions. Zion is floating in the air. He started saying that it would be difficult to absorb Argyth's magic power. Argyth didn't understand why Zion was so calm. Argyth then put his hands in front of him and launched an attack on Zion. Argyth's attack hit Zion, and in the brightest light, Zion's silhouette could be seen. Argyth looked at Zion and angrily said that he had succeeded. Even Axe could not resist his magic. Argyth spread his wings. There was a huge clot of fire and smoke in front of him. Argyth glared at them angrily and shouted that no matter how hard the hero of darkness tried, after his magic, there would not even be anything left of Zion. The next moment, the fire dissipates, and in front of Argyth, Zion appears dressed in black armor with a flaming sword in his hands, and black wings spread wide behind him. Upon seeing Zion in armor, Argyth panics. Zion looks and stands over Argyth. Zion began to say that he used a protective type that creates black armor. Argyth goes into a rage and starts attacking Zion with fireballs. Argyth screams that Zion should not approach him. He is a real monster. All Argyth's attacks are smashed against Zion's armor. The next moment, Zion holds a flaming sword in front of him, and it pierces Arga through and through. Zion's broad wings were behind him. After Zion's attack, Argyth started bleeding from his mouth. Zion glared at Argyth and said that Argyth should still live, since he had not yet been responsible for the deaths of people. Zion grabs the sword with both hands and begins to conjure. Zion, in black armor with a flaming sword in his hands, headed towards Argyth. Zion flies up to Argyth and strikes him with a sword, which cuts Argyth's body in two. Zion, in black armor with a sword in his hands, flies up, and Argyth's body falls into the fire and gradually burns to ashes. Arya looked up at Zion flying in the sky. Then she sat down with Claire and said that Zion had dealt with the demons, which was great news. Haku stood in front of the flaming toad and rejoiced, as the toad would not harm anyone else. Arya ran up to Haku and praised him for his work. Then they praised Siona together with Haku. Zion noticed them. The soldiers helped each other. Claire sat gloomy. Then he said that when he got under the control of the monsters, he disgraced himself. Arya began to calm Claire down and said that he should think about the health of his comrades. And everything is fine now. People from his team came up to Claire and started cheering him on too. And as a result, the guys started hugging. Shun and Haku began to praise each other for the work they had done. Zion touched his shoulder and said he seemed a little tired. Claire came up to Zion and said that he was grateful for Zion's rescue. And after seeing Zion's battle with demons, Claire was not sure of himself. Zion was confused by Claire's words. Claire became alert and approached Zion's face. Then he said that Claire had some question for Zion. Claire approached Zion's ear and said in a whisper that Zion wasn't an axe hero by any chance. Zion held his hands out in front of him and answered Claire's question in the negative. Claire was looking at Zion, and Zion was looking down. Then Claire smiled and said that he understood everything, and that was the end of their conversation. The guys shook hands. Haku and Arya were watching what was happening. Zion looked ahead and smiled. Shion, Arya, and Haku stood in front of the king. The king held out his hand in front of him. He pointed at the guys and praised their feat. The surrounding people started clapping and cheering. Claire was standing next to the king. Zion was standing next to Arya. The guys said that the guys were ready to divide the reward evenly, since they were just saving people. Zion looked at the king. Then he raised his hand, in which there was a small bag. Then he said that he was bored with food. He had stored it, so there would be no problems with transportation and storage. The king gave his approval. The guys left the hall where the king and queen were sitting. They walked down the corridor. The guys stopped as soon as they heard that someone had knocked Zion down. Claire came up to the guys. He said with a smile on his face that he had decided to accompany the guys, since they had already decided to leave the city. Claire held out his hand with the bag to Sione and said that he wanted to give Sione throwing knives. Their blades are soaked in bug venom. The knives should help in neutralizing monsters. Zion was holding a bag of knives and listening intently to Claire. The guys looked at each other. Claire wished the guys a good trip and hoped that they would meet again soon. Zion was also hoping for another meeting. Then the guys shook hands and said goodbye. Akur wagged his tail and sang. The guys were walking across the bridge. Zion was holding a small bag in his hands. Haku was licking his lips, and Arya was telling something with her eyes closed. The guys discussed the award and were pleased with it. Zion stopped as soon as he saw the beastman he had saved earlier in front of him. The man with the ears and paws of the beast lowered his head and sadly said that he was very lucky, as he was able to heal. The man with ears and paws hugged the girl and thanked the guys for saving her. Zion began to smile at the man in response. The guys found themselves outside the gates of the city, and the man with ears and paws and his escort watched them go. Haku stared straight ahead. The guys were far from the city. They were standing on a hillock, and Haku said that, after all, Zion is a hero who inspires other people to feats. Arya held her hair. It was blown by the wind. Zion looked down in surprise. Shion blushed as he was confused by Haku's words. Zion put his hand to his face and said that now was the time to discuss where they would go next. Haku supported Zion's question. Shinon and Haku were standing in front of Arya. Haku asked Arya if she would like to go take off in search of the magic crystals of Zion. Arya thought about it. Then she leaned her hand against her. She leaned her arms against her chest and plaintively replied that because she was a hero, she couldn't go anywhere she wanted. Zion supported her decisions. but that's not what Arya wanted to hear from him. Zion said that there is no more reliable companion than Arya. Arya's face turned red. She looked at Zion and shrugged off that maybe he wanted her to go with them. Zion responded positively to Arya. She closed her eyes. Her cheeks were red. Then Arya took a couple of steps away from Zion and said that first she needed to return to the capital of the country, and then she would go after the guys. Zion asked in surprise if Arya really wanted to quit her job as a hero. Arya answered Zion's question positively, as she has a candidate for receivers. Shion looked at Arya in surprise. She was smiling, and Haku was standing next to them. Arya smiled and said it was better to save friends nearby than sacrifice herself for thousands of people. Sion smiled and put his hand on Arya's head. Then he looked into her eyes and thanked her for such a decision. Arya blushed and smiled. Sion and Haku went down one road, and Arya went the other way. The guys wished each other a good road and said goodbye. Arya found herself at the river. She started jumping over the river on rocks and thinking that she did not know her purpose before, but now she decided to join Zion and travel with him. Arya jumped up and screamed with joy. Arya found herself on the other side of the shore. She exhaled and thought that while she was alone, she needed to control herself and endure. Arya turned around and saw someone running towards her. She was very surprised and did not understand what was going on. Haku stopped and asked where Arya was going alone. Arya smiled and replied to Haku, who was standing in front of her, that she was going to the kingdom of Falintia. Haku replied that they were also on their way there. Arya looked at Haku with a smile on her face. Haku looked at Shion. The next moment, Shion jumped off the Haku and knelt down on one knee. Arya stood in front of him, surprised. Zion held out his hand to Arya and said that they had an empty seat and if Arya would like to go with them. Zion smiled and looked at Arya. Arya thanked and agreed to Zion's proposal. Then Arya put her hand on Zion's arm. Zion and Arya ended up riding Haku. Arya tried to hold back her laughter, but she couldn't do anything, and through her laughter she said that the guys had played the scene well. Shion awkwardly scratched his head and said that Haku had talked him into it. Haku looked at Shion. Arya blushed and said that the guys would really go with her after all. Shion and Haku showed their thumbs up. Then Shion said that Arya could hold on to him while on the road. Arya took hold of Zion's cloak with her hands, and her hair began to blow in the wind. Sion was looking in front of him. He was riding Haku. Arya was holding onto Sion's cloak. Her face was red with embarrassment, and she began to smile slightly. The guys were running through a field with flowers. Mountains were visible in front of them. The guys found themselves on a rocky terrain. Arya said that to complete a hero's career, the king's approval is needed. Haku looked at the mountains and said that they still have a few days to travel. He offers to spend the night in the nearest village. Shion agreed to Haku's proposal. The guys went on. Arya put her hand on her chest and nervously said that she had been wanting to wash her clothes for a long time. Sion turned to Arya and said that her clothes almost didn't smell Arya, and Haku said that Sion shouldn't say that to a girl. The guys ended up at the pond. Arya admired the beauty of this place. She decided to check for monsters in the water. She touched the water with her hand and checked it for monsters. There was no one in the water. Zion began to take off his clothes and asked her to put them on the ground. Seeing Sion without clothes, Arya got nervous and blushed, and then she turned away. Arya started to get even more nervous, and Zion kept taking off his clothes and then he ran into the water. Haku ran after him, saying that he needed to wash himself. Shion and Haku ended up in the water. Arya watched the guys frolic in the water. She sighed heavily and picked up Zion's belongings from the ground. Arya started shouting to the guys that she was washing her clothes elsewhere and the guys shouldn't come there. The guys swam in the water and replied that they understood everything. Arya took off her clothes and started washing them. Then she hung the clothes on strings so that the clothes would dry faster. Arya turned around and looked thoughtfully at the shimmering water. Then she blushed and went to the water, while she said that she decided to be scared too. Arya pushes off from the shore and jumps into the water. She emerges from the water with words of delight. She enjoyed the water. The guys got out of the water and started drying themselves. Xianlun looked away and said that he had completely forgotten about the laundry. The guys noticed the voluminous clothes on the ropes and approached her. The guys looked at each other and began to discuss that Arya had not been heard for a long time. The guys looked at each other. and thought nervously. Birds were flying over the trees. Shion told Haku that he would go look for Arya. Zion walked through the forest and called Arya. Beads of sweat appeared on Zion's face, and he frowned. Shion examined every bush he came across. Then he nervously scratched the back of his head and called Arya once more. Arya was covered in water droplets, and Zion was standing next to the trees. The guys met each other's eyes, and their faces turned red. Zion began to get very nervous and tried to justify himself. Arya started to cover her body with her hands. Then, she screamed that she was very ashamed and clenched her hand into a fist. Arya landed a punch on Zion's face. He screamed at Arya as the birds flew into the sky. Haku was eating fruit with the monkeys and was surprised by an incomprehensible sound. Arya looked guiltily at Zion and apologized for her actions. Zion was scratching his head nervously and also apologized to Arya. Haku was smiling, and they all ate the food they had cooked over the campfire together. Haku thought that the clothes were dry, and Zion and Arya had solved their problem. Hak rides through the hills like a faithful horse, while the main character and Arya are sitting on his back. The beast tells that already behind this mountain there will be a Valen's border outpost, asking the hero whether it is worth speeding up the pace. But Zion, on the contrary, offers to take a little break, and Arya agrees with him. She says that Huck has been running along mountain trails since the morning, worried about his condition, and then he agrees, seeing how his friends insist on a break. After that, the guys stop and decide to roast a barbecue on the campfire. After holding the food over the fire for a while, Arya amiably hands it to the beast, after which he wishes himself a pleasant appetite. The hero recalls the words of one person and says that the journey through the mountains took longer than he thought. According to him, it turned out to be quite difficult to replenish food supplies in the villages, and moreover, monsters periodically appeared on the way, which had to be defeated. He then admits that he hopes that they will have enough food, and informs them that they will need to replenish supplies before arriving in the kingdom. But Hawk, waving his paw and wiping her muzzle, asks him not to worry. He smilingly says that he is happy now, and assumes that they will have enough supplies for another week. Then Huck admits that he ate so much that he began to feel pain in his stomach, when suddenly a loud rumbling sounds from there. Zion assumes he has something wrong with his hearing, awkwardly scratching his head, and the beast says it's sad, which makes Arya start laughing out loud. The hero says that the rumbling of the hack was too loud, and the girl starts laughing even more. Then the beast takes note of this and begins to wonder about the reason for such a sound. Zion says that people also eat a lot after such work and calls it unsurprising, because the hack ran for a very long time. Then he asks for food to be provided to him and Arya, and she, agreeing, promises to bring delicious meat to the beast. Hawk decides to offer to go hunting together, but Zion and Arya tell him to stay, asking him to let them thank him, after which they hide behind bushes. From this, the beast briefly falls into a stupor, after which it begins to feel sad. He says it would be better if at least someone stayed with him. Tears begin to come to his eyes, and he curls up in a ball near a tree. After a while, he manages to lie on the grass and hold a butterfly on his nose. He gets very bored, and Huck decides to go to the guys anyway, even though they told him to wait. Suddenly, he notices someone's unfamiliar scent, after which the butterfly flies off his nose. Huck realizes that he smells like a monster and concludes that he is heading here. Then the beast screams that he is heading here. Then the beast screams that he has noticed the enemy and boldly offers to show himself to him. After that, another animal, unfamiliar to him, comes out of the bushes. Huck recognizes him as a white boar and notices that he looks strong. He assumes that the enemy will attack him, relying on brute force, deciding that a little magic would be nice. However, the boar replies that he has no desire to fight, and Huck is surprised that he can talk. Then he asks where the boar learned this, after which the beast tells him that he was once a pet, but then he was thrown out. Huck is suspicious of this because he doesn't understand why he got rid of him if he was raised as a henchman, but he is glad that at least he wasn't killed. Then he decides to ask the boar if he attacks people while backing away at the same time. The boar replies that it is not, and then the hack informs him that in this case they are not enemies, allowing him to go, for which he expresses his gratitude. Then, as a sign of the same gratitude, he decides to point to the road and tell that it leads to a hidden dungeon. According to him, there you can replenish supplies and hunt well, which makes Haka's eyes light up immediately. After a while, he finds the entrance to the very hidden dungeon that the boar was talking about and enters its first level. Huck realizes that he entered somehow easily and notices that the boar smells on the right, and therefore decides to go left. He manages to take a few steps when suddenly several arrows fly out from somewhere and crash into his body, after which they break. Huck thinks about the fact that he caught fire from these traps and assumes that there must definitely be something tasty here. Then he goes to the second level of the hidden dungeon, where complete darkness reigns. Huck realizes that even with his eyesight, the light does not get into his eyes, when he suddenly notices someone's eyes. Suddenly, something clings to his body and starts biting him. Then Huck starts shouting that he is not their food and uses Red Fox Flame Dance. From this, the little creatures begin to squeal and jump back. The beast manages to see them and he realizes that they are goblins. Seeing how many of them there are, he wonders, is this really the kind of food that you can hunt as much as you want, judging by the words of the boar? But then he remembers that goblin meat is tasteless. It is very bitter, and that after cooking or frying it is still inedible. After which he decides that maybe he just wandered into the wrong place. Entering the third level of the hidden dungeon, Hack finds a strange chest. When he puts his paw on it to open it, an evil goblin suddenly jumps out and starts screaming again. Suddenly, goblins also jump out of the other chests around, who are going to attack the beast. Hack begins to wonder, because he finds some monsters in the chests, but still continues to hope that there will be delicious meat and fruits from below. A little later, on the fourth level, he meets goblins again, who differ in their screams from the previous ones. At the second level, Hack finds nothing new. But at the eighth level, he meets goblins again, and decides that he has had enough. Then he becomes enraged and begins to get angry at the boar, thinking that he has deceived him. Hack runs out of the dungeon, shouting that he sent him to a dungeon infested only with goblins, and gets to a clearing, just where the boar himself sleeps. The beast screams that he deceived him, because there is absolutely no food in that dungeon, but the sleepy boar replies that there is. Then Hack asks to explain that there are only goblins there, when suddenly the sleeping beast opens its eyes. The boar begins not to understand why Haku does not like goblins, but he, even more angry, replies that he does not believe that they are delicious and adds that, with his strength, the boar could hunt quite normal animals. But the boar says that he does not feel the taste of rabbits, bears, and wolves, after which he admits that when he eats goblin meat, his body trembles. Then Huck concludes that he was poisoned by goblin meat and gets very scared of it. The boar invites him to go together, as if under hypnosis, and promises that he will understand how delicious goblins are. But the beast immediately runs away, shouting that he refuses this idea. Huck resorts to Sione and Arya and asks them to listen to him, but when they turn to him to tell him that they have brought delicious meat, the beast notices a pile and several dead goblins lying behind. Then Hack screams in horror and realizes that his friends have also been poisoned with goblin meat, as well as the boar. But the hero replies that he did not and tells them that they were killed because the goblins attacked themselves. Then Arya adds that the edible meat, that is, beef, is a little further away, and Hack begins to rejoice that people have a normal taste. Suddenly, a boar comes out from behind him and notices something on the ground that looks like goblins by smell. Huck immediately starts screaming and says that he's had enough, after which he runs away. Zion and Arya are very surprised by this reaction, not understanding what is happening. After a while, the guys hit the road. Hack says that there should be an outpost of the Valen's kingdom further down this road, and then asks if he will be allowed to cross the border. Son assumes that if you say that he is an improvised beast, then there should be no problems, and remembers that they also have a water hero, thinking that everything will be fine. Huck realizes that this is Arya, and, along with the hero, notices that she has somehow quieted down. When they glance at her, they see that the girl has quietly fallen asleep during the journey. The guys think she looks very cute, and they smile at each other. Suddenly, they all start to hear the screams of a man who is driving someone away. Arya wakes up and asks what's going on, when she suddenly notices large spiders nearby. After taking a closer look, the guys notice a girl among them and decide to save her. Huck notices that she doesn't look like an adventurer, while the hero tells everyone to take one spider on themselves. One of the monsters releases a spider web towards Arya with a characteristic sound, but she deftly dodges and screams that she foresaw this. She then uses the ice sword and asks him to prove himself. After that, the girl delivers a powerful blow with her ice sword directly into the face of the monster, which turns out to be decisive for him. The spider is thrown aside, and it makes the last sound. At this time, the main character uses black wings and soars into the air directly above his enemy. Then he starts firing at the spider, and his projectiles make a lot of holes in the monster's body. In parallel, the hack hits the third spider and, not understanding the enemy's motive, wonders, why do the spiders attack to the end if they can just run away? After a while, the guys defeat all the monsters. Then they approach the girl, and Arya asks if she is injured. The stranger replies that she is not, and convinces them that she is fine, starting to smile. Suddenly, she recognizes the water hero in the Arya and decides to clarify it, to which she receives a positive response. Then the stranger tells that she saw her a few years ago in Valencia, adding that she is heading from there. Arya, seeing that the girl was attacked by monsters, makes a sad look and decides to ask where her escort is, but she replies that unfortunately she does not have enough money for this, since she works as a fortune teller. Suddenly she grabs Arya by the hands and asks her to accompany her to the rotor, which is located behind the mountains nearby, after which she tells that she left her husband, who may be looking for her now. Arya says they can escort the stranger to the nearest village, but realizes that they themselves are in a hurry too. Then the hero promises to protect her from her husband and offers to return to Valens first, but she immediately refuses to return there. She says it's better to go alone into the mountains, after which Hack suggests just continuing on his way. The hero agrees with him, deciding not to force the girl to do what she does not want, but the stranger suddenly rushes to Arya, asking them to stop. She asks Arya if she's really going to leave a helpless woman so easily, and finally asks not to leave her here alone. Then the hero decides to go and inspect the border outpost, assuming that the stranger's husband had to cross the border if he went looking for her. The girl asks with a very serious look if Arya will stay with her, and Zion replies that yes. After that, Zion and Huck set off on a journey, and the first one asks a friend what he thinks about the fortune teller. In response, Huck admits that he doesn't really believe her, looking up and thinking about something. The hero remembers that she was almost killed by monsters, but she wants to go to the mountains and suggests that there may be other reasons why she does not want to return. Suddenly, Huck notices several men running at him. He suggests that among them you need to find the fortune teller's husband. One of them turns to the hero, asking if he has seen a woman here who looks like a fortune teller. Zion replies that he saw her and adds that his friend is looking after her now. Then the man says that this is very bad, since she is a criminal and belongs to a criminal organization for organ smuggling. Upon hearing this, the hero immediately changes face and asks them again. At this time, the girl turns to Arya and offers to tell her fortune for the future with her man. But she replies that the hero is not her man. Then the fortune teller says that it is clear that she is in love with him, and informs him that she is never wrong about this. Then, the girl promises to predict the fate of Arya and, taking out the cards, asks her to draw 2 pieces. This time, she still decides to do it and holds out her hand. Arya pulls out the cards, and the fortune teller tells her that the first card speaks about the state of the soul. From this, she concludes that darkness has settled in the hero, since he was either rejected by his beloved woman or he lost her. The girl realizes that she guessed right, because Zion lost his bride and now carries this burden. But then the fortune teller adds that this does not mean that he and Arya have no chance, and tells them that somewhere there is a key to his heart. According to her, the second card is a description of the girl. The fortune teller explains that it depicts a single-minded girl who carries fresh water to her lover, and Arya suggests that this may mean compatibility. But the fortune teller replies that she will not say for nothing, and asks the girl to persuade the hero to accompany her to the rotor when he comes, promising in this case to tell about their compatibility. Arya's eyes light up with interest, and she agrees to it. After that, the fortune teller says that everything depends on the result, but does not have time to finish, when suddenly someone interrupts her with their screams. Huck points at her, addressing the men who followed him. Then the hero asks Arya if she is okay, when suddenly the fortune teller says that she did not think that Zion would return so quickly, and pulls out his weapon. She puts a knife to Arya's throat and tells her not to move. thinking that it'll be difficult for her to get out of this situation, regardless of whether she is a hero or not. The girl asks what is going on, when suddenly the men call her a witch. But the girl tells them to keep quiet, adding that if she goes with them, she will be executed anyway. She then orders the guys to drop their weapons, threatening that otherwise she will kill Arya. The hero understands that the situation is critical and uses the black hand skill. The black tentacles immediately neutralize the fortune teller, preventing her from moving. Zion tells her to surrender, as she must answer for her crimes, and she realizes that there is no way out, which is why she is indecently expressed. In the end, the men take the criminal away, saying goodbye to the guys. The hero admits that he is interested in how this woman has ingratiated herself with Arya in such a short time, and Huck also asks how it happened. Then the beast adds that he has heard that her love predictions always come true and begins to wonder about the fact that she has money problems. Arya falls into a stupor, when suddenly Huck realizes that she has said something good to her. But then she agrees with Huck and tells him that the fortune teller told fortunes for her once. Then the beast says that Arya is still a girl, and assumes that it was a love prediction. Suddenly, the hero becomes interested and he asks the girl to tell him about it in more detail. But Arya informs him that she cannot tell him, because if she does, it will not come true. The guys climb up to the elevation and begin to observe the weather. Hack says that everything is not getting clearer, and Arya says that rainy weather in Valencia is not uncommon. Then the hero, seeing that the rain will start at night, offers to find a place to stay. The girl says that there is a church nearby, with a hotel where you can spend the night and suggests staying there today. Zion replies that it's a good idea, and Hawk smilingly agrees with him. Then the hero says that it is better to go to the church after a short rest and informs that he will stand guard so that the others can sleep peacefully. Arya expresses her gratitude by calling him a gentleman and snuggles up to Haku. After a while, they fall asleep, and the hero notices that it happened quite quickly. Seeing how Arya and Hack snuggled up to each other, the hero smiles because he finds this view quite cute. Then he concludes that his friends are very tired and begins to rejoice that he and the girl have become good friends with the beast. But suddenly the hero begins to feel someone's aura behind him and turns around. Then he decides to go downstairs, realizing that he will not be able to use magic detection. Since it is night, however, he begins to feel a slight thirst for murder. Because of this, he wonders if someone is targeting him and his friends. Suddenly, Zion casts his gaze to the side and notices the familiar holes in the ground. From this, he immediately becomes alert and pulls out his sword, hoping that he is still mistaken in his guesses. At the same moment, a giant worm appears from the ground behind him. He opens his toothy mouth, when suddenly the hero notices him and turns around, defending himself with his weapon. The monster strikes at Zion, but only hits the ground as he manages to bounce back. Then he hides in one of the holes in the ground. The hero notices for himself that the worm is quite fast, but suddenly notices something. He sees that the monster has undigested prey in its belly, and, judging by its size, assumes that it is either a cow or a pig, but then admits that it may be a human. In this case, Zion does not decide to use explosive magic on the monster, and is going to calculate by the sound of its movement underground, and cut a part of its body when it attacks it. Then he stops in place when suddenly a worm breaks out of the ground again, which is once again going to attack and eat him. At the same moment, Zion makes a jump and cuts the monster's body into several parts, which fall to the ground and begin to bleed. Looking at the thickest part of the body, the hero hopes that there will be a cow or a pig, after which he makes a neat incision. Contrary to his hopes, a man falls out of a part of this body, wrapped in slime. Zion sees this and realizes that it's bad. Then he notices that the man is all in plate armor, and from this assumes that he may still be alive. The hero takes off his helmet and sees that he is still alive, but has lost consciousness. Then he starts talking to the man and touching his face, when suddenly he comes to himself and screams in surprise. He asks about what happened, and Zion explains that he was eaten by a worm, after which he ended up in the monster's stomach. Then he asks the person if his memory has been lost, worrying about him. He replies he is not, and tells that he was walking along the Valencia road, and when he decided to rest, he was attacked by a worm. Then the man adds that he believed too much in his own strength, because he thought that the armor would protect him, and admit that it was a mistake. Then he tells her that the church on the border where he is staying is a very dangerous place, which makes the hero's expression immediately change, and she immediately asks him again. Then Zion informs that he is not going to ask for something for salvation, but asks the person to answer the question, after which he asks if he would have been eaten if he had failed. The man decides to tell the hero something, asking him not to tell anyone about it, and explains that he has a talent for finding hidden rooms and traps. He admits that this church seemed very suspicious to him, and therefore, out of great interest, he entered it under the cover of night. There, the man found a hidden room and began to explore it. There were a lot of weapons and armor in the basement of the church, among which there were copies with fresh blood. However, he managed to find a much more terrifying thing. The hero understands that we are talking about an elf's ear and clarifies this with a serious and worried look, since he knows that hunting elves is prohibited everywhere. The man says that there were false rumors that if you use an elf's ear, you can get a longevity potion, and adds that in the past, there was a war between the elves themselves and the people who hunted them. According to the man, the church serves as a refuge for dangerous types, and therefore he got out of there faster. Then the hero assumes that a priest is behind this, and his interlocutor tells him that, according to rumors, he is kind, although he agrees with suspicions. By this point, the friends of Zion have resorted to them. Huck asks about what happened, while Arya reports that she was very worried about him, clarifying where he went. The man immediately recognizes the water hero in the girl, and greatly frightened, is surprised that she is traveling with Zion. Then he decides that this is bad and runs away, reminding the hero to keep the information a secret. Huck is a little surprised and asks Zion about this reaction, assuming that he was mistaken for some kind of monster. Then he decides to tell his friends everything. After that, the hack assumes that the priest is one of the gang, and the hero replies that he thinks so too, since people of different professions can be in the gang in order to hide from the public. Arya also suggests that they may be from an anti-social organization from her country, because one day she learned about a rumor that this church could be a haven for criminals. Therefore, her mentor searched the building with soldiers, but the girl explains that in the end nothing was found and believes that everything was hidden. Then the hero notices that since the church is located on the border, it is relatively easy to send weapons to the city. Then he turns to Arya and asks her what she will do if the priest turns out to be a gang member. The girl makes a very serious face, lowering her head, and replies that in this case she will arrest him, when suddenly Hack joins her, promising to help, after which the hero agrees with him, since she is their friend. Then Arya folds her arms over her chest and thanks her friends and such words. She then turns her back on them, holding back her emotions at the realization that Zion has called her his friend again. After that, the guys go to the hotel. Looking at the building from a low hill, the hero reports that he first comes down alone to ask about a bed for the night. Arya agrees with him, realizing that her face is too recognizable and that the owners may suspect something and refuse. Then Huck asks not to worry about him, as he can spend the night in the stable. The hero goes to the building, telling his friends that it is still worth trying to negotiate, after which he knocks on the door and asks if anyone is inside. Inside the building, he is greeted by several people who immediately greet him. Zion, looking at the elderly man and the woman next to him, assumes that they are married, and when he sees their children, concludes that they have a family business. Suddenly, Huck looks out of the doorway and greets everyone. The man is happy that this is an improvised animal and tells them that they have no guest today, asking the guys to stay. Then the owner adds that Haku, as an improvised beast, will have to stay in the stable, and the hero agrees to this, informing them that his companion Arya will still be with them. After that, the girl begins to wave her hand at the man and introduces herself as Arya Michelet, which causes him to become somewhat horrified and begins to mumble questioningly. The owner decides to clarify whether she came with some kind of supervision, to which she replies that she did not and explains that she dropped by here on her way to the capital. Then the girl asks if she will interfere with them, and the man assures her otherwise. The hero notices for himself that the owner, when he saw Arya, was just as surprised as the guy in armor. This is starting to cause him some anxiety. Suddenly, a guy comes out to the guys and asks the owner if they really have guests, because he heard other people's voices. Then he introduces himself as the host, the priest of this church. The hero also introduces himself and introduces him to Huck and Arya. The host notices that Zion's sidekick beast is quite strong and also welcomes the water hero. Then he informs them that the guys can look into the church if they want and offers to shield in the chapel, in response to which Zion and Arya express their gratitude. The host says that this church is visited by many pilgrims who pray here for salvation. The hero glances to the side and, seeing the girl sitting on her knees, concludes that there's only a priest and a sister here. Then the host says that he believes in fate and asks the guys not to be shy and let them know if they need anything, even though they have known each other for a short time. He promises to try to help them, and Arya notices that he is very kind. When they go outside, they notice that it is quite dark. Then Huck decides to go to the stable and tells the others to go to the hotel. Suddenly, the hero informs him that he is examining this church at night and asks the beast to keep an eye on the auras of the staff and the priest, just in case. Huck asks him to take care of himself and leaves. After that, it starts to rain outside. Zion takes his weapon in its case and informs Arya about the start of the operation. Then he uses a spell and adds that if he does not return within 3 minutes, the girl may think that something has happened to him. In this case, she promises to come to the rescue, and they both begin to hope that everything will be fine. After that, the hero teleports closer to the church and uses magic detection. That's how he understands that the priest and the sister are not in the chapel. Then Zion decides to climb into the room next to the chapel. Seeing a lot of bookcases there, he realizes that this is a library and assumes that it should be easy to get into the basement, judging by the data he received. Then the hero remembers that there should be a device on the third shelf from below and, after removing the book, finds it. To open the door, he presses a button, after which the cabinet begins to move. Behind him, Zion sees a staircase that leads to the basement. He remembers that everything is going as the guy in armor said, hoping that there will be no traps here. When the hero goes down to the basement, he notices a bunch of weapons, equipment, and even magical items, looking at everything with suspicion. But then he passes by it, and his gaze changes greatly because those very ears of the elves appear in front of him. Zion remembers that there are no elves in the kingdom of Valanche and concludes from this that they were brought from afar or bought from someone. Suddenly, the hero notices that there is an unlocked chest in the room, which the guy in armor did not report. He begins to assume that people are buying something illegal here and decides that it is necessary to check it. At this time, Arya is lying on the bed, swinging her legs. She sighs heavily, thinking about how bored she is being alone in the room right now. Then she begins to think that Zion never gets into critical situations, realizing that she, as his comrade, can only wait. However, Arya convinces herself that if he does have problems, she will save him. The girl imagines how the hero, seeing that she is ready to do anything for him, confesses his love to her and asks her to marry him. This causes Arya to spin from side to side. When she suddenly hears strange screams, she immediately jumps up and wonders, what are those screams? But then Arya realizes that the voice is too shrill and begins to suspect Mandrake of this. Mandrake looks like an ordinary grass, but if you take it out of the ground, you can see the root in the form of a man who makes a piercing scream. If a person hears her scream up close, she will cause a headache, vomiting, or even death. Then the girl realizes that a mandrake trap has been activated and assumes that she could have been put in a treasure chest, thereby harming the one who opened it. Then, realizing that even Zion could suffer, Arya decides that it's her turn and asks him to just wait for her. But suddenly, as soon as she leaves the room, she is dealt a magical blow. The girl is very surprised by this and steps back. She is confronted by the innkeeper, who asks her where she is going, calling her a respected customer. Arya immediately understands the man's attitude, and then notices his wife next to him. The owner informs them that he does not want to fight with the girl, but they were ordered to kill her if she left the room. Arya quickly looks him over and notices a non-standard eye color. She immediately understands what this means about the influence of light magic, and the man replies that it was worth expecting from her. But then he adds that in such darkness against two, even a skilled hero will have a hard time. He calls these circumstances perfect for killing a hero, after which he adds that they have their own reasons. The girl immediately realizes that they are from an antisocial organization, like that priest, and asks about it. However, the woman says that the chatter has already been enough and offers to kill Arya, and the man agrees with her, after which they attack her. The owner calls the girl the king's chain dog and says she will have to die. But she turns to the ice sword and asks him to prove himself. At the same moment, a sword appears in her hand, and then Arya gravely asks the man and woman to let her go to Zion. The innkeeper and his wife are preparing to attack the girl from different sides. The man tells her not to look down on them, as they are former B-rank adventurers, assuring her that they will be able to defeat even a wyvern, not to mention humans. The wife says that they killed many people in this darkness, after which the man attacks the girl, shouting that now she will die too, and calls her a hero. But Arya blocks the blow and deflects the attack. The woman is not at all surprised by this, because it was worth expecting, and urges her husband to use a special attack, which he agrees with. However, the girl apologizes and says that she has no time to do all this, after which she uses a fettering current. The owner and wife start screaming, because they have absorbed the slime, and when the latter swings a weapon, Arya stabs her. She defeats the woman and then approaches the man, informing him that she will ask him a few questions, since time is short. The girl asks where the light magician is, and assumes that he is a priest. The owner does not answer her, and then Arya notices that the children are asleep. But he says that despite their young age, they are much stronger than their parents, and adds that no matter how strong the beast is, it will still be defenseless while it sleeps. At this time, a guy and a girl are going to attack a hack sleeping in a stable. The first one turns to his sister and clarifies that their enemy is a monster, asking her not to relax. But she replies that she hid their smells, asking her brother not to worry, and suggests that if his head is cut off, he will have to die. Then they go into the stable, and the guy says that if the swords don't work, then magic will have to be used. Then they swing their weapons and strike at the beast's body. Suddenly, the blades of their swords break apart as soon as they come into contact with Hakka's body. The girl and the guy are very surprised by this and start to panic. The latter begins to suspect something is wrong and remembers that the beast must be white. His sister agrees and notices that the coat is turned brown and the body is bigger. Then she screams that the guy would rather use magic, which he agrees with, after which he uses lightning arrows. The guy assumes that the spell seems to have worked, and the sister asks if he is sure. Suddenly, the beast opens its mouth and begins to yawn. The children are very surprised and very frightened by this. Then Huck gets to his feet and reports that he didn't actually sleep. He remembers that he has not taken this form for a long time and asks an interesting question. How much damage can he absorb? The children start screaming and fall to the ground, after which Hack tells them that when he takes the form of a brown fox, his eyes turn evil. Then the guy screams to his sister that he needs to retreat, and she agrees with him. They begin to run away, when suddenly the beast hits them with its tail, throwing them aside. From such a blow, a guy and a girl with their bodies make a hole in the wall. Huck informs them that it is rude to wake up guests in the middle of the night, when he suddenly notices that something strange is happening behind the church building. Then he realizes that he is not the only one who is noisy here. At this time, the host and the sister, clearing their throat, are surprised that the mandrake trap did not work. Then the girl glances towards the clouds of dust and concludes that this is what happened, when suddenly she starts shouting that Zion is coming. At the same moment, a hero comes out of the clouds of dust, shrouded in dark magic. The host admits that he considered the water hero to be a big hindrance, although now he sees that Zion was able to avoid that trap. He says that it was really dangerous, as if it were not for the cover of darkness, he could have suffered. But then the hero decides to ask what his opponents are trying to achieve, because Valens has a good government. The host says that this country should declare war and expand its territories, although, despite this, it has made peace with the hated Erast. Then he cries out that the cowardly king was afraid of the hero of darkness. The hero says that he understands the king's fear, since Haste himself also uses the magic of darkness and carries a threat. He then adds that he would like to avoid a pointless battle and suggests that the priest surrender. However, he replies that he will not do this for anything, saying that although Zion is strong, he is not invincible. The host then uses his magic and calls himself a light magician. At the same moment, the magic that protected the hero disappears, and he realizes that the priest is still a good caster, since he was able to remove the veil of darkness. Suddenly, he screams that he is not afraid of the magician of darkness, especially without his magic. Zion says that the magic of light is his vulnerable point, realizing that if he is touched by this spell, he will weaken and will not be able to recover. The host attacks him without interruptions, and the hero realizes that this requires a large supply of mana. However, the hero begins to doubt that the priest has such a large amount of mana when he suddenly notices a sister who uses her magic nearby. Nearby, he guesses that this sister is passing mana to him. Then Zion uses the spell Firewall, letting the priest know that he knows something besides the magic of darkness and owns not only it. The hero asks him why he thought he was not capable of such a thing, when suddenly his sister tells the host that he will die at this rate, feeling how the fire is already painfully burning his body. The priest rushes to her and realizes that she cannot use light magic now, when suddenly Zion decides to use the Dark Hand spell. At the same moment, black tentacles bind the girl and the guy, causing them to start screaming. The hero admits that for a magician of darkness, a magician of light will be the worst opponent, but then adds that the outcome of the battle depends on the skill of the magician. After that, the story is transferred to the capital of the kingdom of Valens. There, the king greets the hero of the water and remembers that he heard that she had an urgent matter for him. The girl replies that yes, and says that she has evidence that the church on the border of the kingdom is a refuge for an antisocial organization. She then adds that her comrades have detained 6 of the organization and asks the king to urgently send soldiers there. Then he remembers that her teacher also suspected this church, realizing that these suspicions were justified after all. After that, the hero shows the weapon and explains that this entire arsenal was stored in the basement, and clarifies that he also found many prohibited goods there, such as elf ears, for example. Then he also asks to send soldiers to the church urgently, and the king thanks him for his assistance, but then remembers that he has never heard his name before. Then the hero decides to introduce himself and begins to call his name, when suddenly Arya interrupts him and introduces him as Sealamer Chocolips and his friend. She understands that it will be bad if everyone finds out that he is a former hero of darkness. The king is a little surprised by such a rare name, and the girl immediately informs him that she would like to appear tomorrow on another matter, and takes the hero with her. After that, they leave, walking down the street. Zion turns to Arya and informs her that the name she gave him is very terrible. She admits that she thinks so too, adding that she doesn't know how to come up with names. Suddenly, several children run up to her, who begin to ask Arya to shake their hand. After that, a lot of people gather around the guys with their children. Some begin to ask her to hug the child, others give the girl flowers, and the rest simply congratulate her on her return to the capital. Suddenly, one of the Demets asks Arya if she is already in the group, and the other children ask if she is traveling only with the hero, assuming that he is her lover. Arya immediately begins to deny this, explaining that Zion just saved her and is still only a savior. Then the children take note of this and praise the hero for such an act, after which the adults begin to do the same as the children. Zion smiles sweetly, looking at the girl, and notices that the hero of the water is quite popular here, when suddenly she replies that he is much more popular than her. Then they go on, and the hero suggests speeding up, thinking that the hack has probably already been waiting for them. Suddenly, Arya remembers that it's not far from here to her destination and starts running. Zion asks her if she needs to meet with a mentor in order to finish the hero's work, remembering that he had already met the previous water hero. The girl remembers that her name was Lineria and says that she was strange. Then she adds that it is better not to ask her about her marriage and age. Arya says that Lineria is 29, but she wants to get married before the age of 30, and therefore is in despair. The girl asks the hero not to flirt with her, but he does not immediately understand her. After a while, the guys come to a small house. Arya announces that they have come, after which she knocks on the door, addressing the teacher. She waits for a response within a few seconds, but when it does not follow, assumes that the teacher is not at home and begins to think that she is drinking again. Then Arya explains that as soon as she gets drunk, she begins to ignore the guests, after which she begins to shout that if the teacher does not come out, she will tell about how the first love of that one left her after 3 days. After that, the door of the house opens, and a girl in a big witch hat comes out. She shouts out the name of the hero's girlfriend, addressing her. Lineria then reminds her that she asked not to talk about that incident, but Arya replies that she threatened this because she didn't come out at all, and asks if they can enter the house to talk. The teacher understands that even if he refuses, Arya will still come in. when suddenly she pays attention to the hero and asks the student about who this handsome man is. But suddenly Lineria approaches him and kisses him on the cheek, after which she rushes into the arms of the hero saying that she has found her future husband. However, then she starts to feel cold, moving away from Zion. The teacher notices Arya standing between them, who advises her to sober up if she wants to continue living. After that, the guys come into the house and sit down at the table. Lineria reports that she realized what they needed, surprised that the hero is the same axe. Then she remembers how Zion saved her many times too, not forgetting his skill. The girl admits that she would never have thought that a man like him would stop being a hero. Then Zion tells that he was betrayed by his comrades, and now he is following his path through life. Arya says that he can be understood and explains that she will therefore follow him, choosing Aliona as his successor. But her teacher says that this is impossible, which makes the girl indignant. Then Lineria, gritting her teeth, explains that that girl left with a guy and ran away, starting to get more and more angry. She then adds that Aliona will not return, as she boasted that she had found the one and confessed that she wanted to kill her. But Arya calms her down, saying that there is no need to kill anyone. Then she realizes that the situation is still not the best, and assumes that then her teacher will not become a hero again, to which she replies that she has more important things to do. However, Arya realizes that she is going to look for a husband. Then the girl begins to promise that after the trip she will become a hero again, asking Lineria to take this title for herself only for a while. The teacher asks how many years it will take, realizing that he may grow old during this time. Upon hearing this, Arya begins to think that she will not be able to persuade her, and that she will have to look for the escaped Aliona. But suddenly, Lineria reports that she has one request, in return for which she is ready to agree. The teacher asks her to find a potion that can enlarge her breasts. This makes the hero a little surprised, and Arya falls into a stupor. For a few seconds, the girl tries to comprehend what was said, when she suddenly realizes that she still cares about it. She says she is thinking that this is not the case, when suddenly the teacher asks her to shut up. She says that Arias cannot understand her with such a gift, pointing to her breasts. Lineria then adds that if the guys do bring this potion, she will become a temporary hero. However, Arya asks her to slow down, saying that she does not know how difficult it is. And Lineria herself admits that, of course, she tried many times to find a potion, but everything was unsuccessful, when suddenly she remembers that now they have a hero. She reveals that Zion is the strongest hero of the Axe Darkness, assuming that with his help they will clear the Cave of 10 Paths. But then Lineria adds that if the guys refuse, the hero will become her husband, which makes Arya realize that she is hopeless. Then Zion agrees to bring this potion from the cave. The teacher says that her husband will not refuse, when suddenly he interrupts her and replies that he does not plan to get married. The girl takes note of this and explains that the hero can learn all the details from Arya. After that, the guys leave her house. Walking down the street, Arya says that her teacher, as a hero, is very strong, good at cooking and keeps the house clean, but thinks that she is not being married because of her small breasts. The hero admits that he has not heard of a potion that would enlarge breasts, and then the girl explains that there is a cave in the west where an old witch lives. She has all kinds of dangerous potions, and people say that there is one among them. Zion finds this strange and begins to doubt it. Arya says that this is something like a legend of this country. There was an adventurer who got a potion from a witch and lost her arm while getting to her. The girl says that this is a very popular story in these places. The hero asks if this potion is so desirable, saying that he does not understand it. Then Arya warns that her words may sound selfish, after which she informs that this time she wants to go herself. But in response, Zion reminds her that the girl's helping him with the collection of magic crystals, asking her not to be modest, and holds out her hand. Then he adds that he really needs the girl's help, which makes her freeze at first, not knowing what words to choose. However, then the girl breaks into a smile and begins to thank him, bringing her hand to her chest. The hero and Arya are flying in the air together. The girl admires the fact that she can fly, albeit with the help of a friend, and says that this way they will soon arrive in Haku. She says that as a child, she dreamed of becoming a bird in order to be free and unencumbered. Zion agrees with her and adds that sometimes you should give free rein to your desires. However, The hero says that the sky is dangerous in its own way, because while a person is flying, a big bird can eat him. Then Arya starts laughing, assuming that in this case she will become fodder. Suddenly, she points to the road and informs that there's a cave of 10 paths further on. The hero assumes that in this case they can meet Hack on the way back, although then he realizes that he does not need to meet him. Arya doesn't understand what he's talking about at first, but then she glances at the ground and sees a beast with several armed men standing in front of it. The girl recognizes them and tells them that they are a fairly well-known group of adventurers, asking the hero to hurry up. He takes note of this and begins to decline. At this time, Hack begins to prepare for battle and growl, when suddenly his friends jump down to him. The hero screams that the beast is his friend and asks the adventurers to lay down their weapons. People are a little surprised that Zion has made such a strong magical fox an assistant and still decide to stop. But one of them turns to the hero and notices that the Hack is apparently not going to stop, after which he asks the beast what happened. He replies that the adventurers do not want to take back their words, and says that he can just tear them all up. Then Zion asks about what they said, and the beast tells him that people humiliated his friends with the dirtiest words. Suddenly, Arya introduces herself as the hero of the water, and clarifies whether people are a group called the Great Sword of Extermination. Then she admits that she doesn't know what happened between them, but still asks everyone to stop. Then one of the adventurers asks the guys to do something about the thirst for killing their pet beast, as they are very scared, and the girl asks Haka to calm down, even though she does not know what he was told. The beast decides to listen to her anyway and calms down. Then the adventurers say that they would not like to conflict with the hero and decide to retreat. After that, they gather at the Ten Ways cave to clean it up. Arya is a little surprised by this and informs them that they are going there too. The adventurer notices that they have taken the hero with them and warns that it will not be easy there. Then people leave, telling the guys that they are counting on them. After that, the hero approaches the Hack and puts his hand on it. He says that this is the first time he has seen the beast so angry and asks if the adventurers really said something serious. Then Hack says that at first they communicated normally, but then people suddenly attacked him and began to provoke Zion, realizes that they wanted to kill the beast with a sudden attack and is glad that he was not injured. Arya explains that those adventurers are a well-known A-rank group in the capital, consisting of skilled guys. It consists of the warrior Gaiad, the spearman Meme, the wrecker Wax, and the robber Chap. Gaiad stands out especially among them, because he is a former mercenary. A girl says that when she was a child, he was called the Killer of 1,000. It was obvious from him because he became famous in the war. Then Arya remembers that the adventurers went to the cave and asks the hero what should be done. He believes that there is no need to rebuild a plan because the girl always has him and he will always have a Hack. The beast agrees with him, saying that he will always follow Zion. The hero apologizes for changing the subject and tells Haku that Arya's mentor really needs a potion that is located in the Cave of 10 Paths. The beast, upon learning the details, grins a little and says that he does not quite understand Linaria's motives, suggesting that she wants to be desired with big breasts. Then the hero exhales with relief, seeing that his friend has returned to normal. After that, the story moves to the vicinity of the Ten Ways cave. Gaiad, seeing the opponents, says that today the weaklings have gathered again. Suddenly, Shap turns to him and asks what they will do with the hero and his friends. Then the warrior thinks about the fact that that fox is quite strong and says that among all the monsters he defeated, Hack is the strongest. Chap adds that Arya will also cause problems because she has the magic of water and ice. However, Gaiad assures his friend that the girl is still very young, suggesting just not to worry about it. Then Chap asks him about Zion, suggesting that he is not as simple as he seems. Gaiad agrees with him, thinking that the hero is also strong, when he suddenly notices the blood-sucking bats. Suddenly, Meme announces that he will take care of them, after which he uses the spell, 1,000 flashes of lightning. After that, all the bats fall to the ground, no longer moving. Gaiad says that the girl, as always, is incredible, paying special attention to her buttocks. He asks if Meme wants to date him, but she politely refuses. She then adds that she knows Zion and tells him that he is the hero of the Darkness of Axe. From this, everyone else is shocked. not believing in her words. Meme reminds that she comes from where Axe himself comes from and says that she often saw him. The girl says that even if the hero wore a mask, his gait and stance always give him away, and recalls that she even met him personally once. Gaiad says it's terrible. He then informs that the deal, conducted by the witch from the cave, takes place once every 10 years. If the adventurers miss this chance, they will have to wait a very long time. Then, Gaiad says that they will have to fight for the sake of the longevity potion. Meme immediately takes on Zion, as she has been following him and would like to act alone. The warrior takes note of this, when suddenly Wax informs him that he has an idea. He says that if you go deep into this cave, you can stumble upon a fork of 10 paths, one of which will be connected to the witch's lair. Wax suggests that if the guys split up, they still won't be able to find the right path, and will lose time. Gaiad then tells him to take care of the beast, as it is well suited against magical beasts. Wax takes note of this, and remembers that the attacks of the beasts on him do not work in any way. Then Gaiad turns to Chop, and says that he will take care of the water hero. He understands that Arya will surpass him in strength, but he knows her weakness, because Chop is a specialist in girls. The latter confirms his words and asks why not attack the 4 of them on one. But Gaiad explains that while they will deal with them one by one, they will lose time that can be spent on cleaning up. Then he adds that they don't have to beat the guys, because you can just force them to retreat for today. Then Chop understands what his friend is talking about, and reminds him that he has many traps that are unpleasant for girls. At this time, the guys approach the entrance to the cave and conclude that the adventurers still want to fight. The hero turns to his friends and asks them to be careful, as they do not know what traps are inside. Arya, straining a little, notices that this group treats their rivals quite cruelly, and Hack adds that they went too far with the beating, hating them with all their heart. Suddenly, the guys reach the place where the adventurers defeated the bats. The girl notices and points it out. The hero agrees with her, saying that it must be the work of that group of pretty smart guys. Then, they come to the 10 forks and assume that those 10 paths are somewhere here. Arya reads the text on the sign that if you go with more than one person, the traps left by Valencia adventurers will be activated. The hero wonders when this sign was put up, and the girl clarifies the reason why he asks about it at all. Then Zion tells that the humidity in the cave is high, and notices that, however, the wooden tablet is still dry. Hack also says that this is very strange, and admits that that group of adventurers just wants to separate them in this way. The hero reminds them that they have a fork of 10 paths and decides that it will be faster if they just split up. Arya says she thinks so too, and Huck remembers that whoever meets the witch will have to ask for a breast augmentation potion. Then Zion says that starting from the left, he will clear the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, after which the girl takes over the 2nd, 5th, and 8th, and Hack takes over the 3rd, 6th, and 9th. Noticing that he does not have 4 paths and laughing at this, the hero sets off on a journey and tells his friends that they will see each other again soon. Arya asks him to be careful, and the beast offers to eat something delicious after cleaning. Huck enters the tunnel thinking about meat and that fried meat tastes better than raw. Suddenly, arrows fired by someone start flying at him from somewhere, but when they crash into the beast's body, they fly back, forcing it to just stop. Huck thinks he needs to be more careful, then turns around. Then he notices a familiar person and recognizes him as Wax. He says that the masking of smells has already ended, and the beast assumes that this is why he decided to show off at last. Huck realizes that the guy hid somewhere in that room and chased him and his friends after separating them. He then asks why Wax was the one who volunteered to deal with him out of all 4, remembering that he had recently insulted his friends. Then Huck concludes that the adventurer has chosen a beast as an enemy, and calls him a coward. He promises that the man will pay for those insults towards his 2 friends. The beast asks Wax that he will certainly not take back his words, to which he replies that his fists will not lose to any beasts and monsters, asking Hack to attack and using his magic. However, contrary to his expectations, the Hack accelerates quickly and strikes the adventurer, thereby knocking him into the ground. After that, the beast informs him that he will not allow him to use magic items, calling him a rather talkative person. Then Huck assumes that the rest of this group can also attack his friends one at a time, and begins to worry about Arya and Zion. At this time, the girl screams in fear and begins not to understand what is wrong with this road because there are only insects and snakes here. Suddenly, in front of her, she begins to see a crowd of hideous skeletons heading towards her. This makes Arya even more scared and starts begging for mercy. But seeing that the monsters continue to walk towards her and how disgusting they look, she decides to use a water pistol, shouting at them not to approach. From her shots, heads fly off the bodies of skeletons. The girl understands that this is how she will have to make her way and tries to come to terms with it. But suddenly, in the pitch darkness that awaits her ahead, she begins to see someone's eyes, which makes her even more tense and begins to assume who it might be. Suddenly, crazy goblins run out of there and start screaming about committing violent acts on the girl. Arya realizes that these are goblins' multipliers and begins to run away in fear. But then she bumps her head painfully into something and screams in surprise. Trying to go further, the girl realizes that some kind of barrier prevents her from doing this. Suddenly, Chop appears behind the barrier, who informs Arya that she was unlucky, since out of all 10 ways she went this way, calling her a hero of water. The girl realizes that he appeared at such an inopportune moment and uses the ice sword. With the help of weapons, she strikes many goblins, cutting off their limbs, when suddenly it becomes mentally difficult for her. Suddenly, Chap reports that he has only one requirement and asks the girl to leave this dungeon. And since he does not believe promises just in words, he asks to give him Arya's ring as a guarantee. This makes her furious and tells Chap to stop joking. But he replies that it's all for her own good, because if she doesn't hurry, she'll be eaten by goblins. Then the girl uses the rain of ice spears. At the same moment, the spears pierce through the goblins' bodies and break the barrier created by Chap. The girl screams that he will not stop her with such a cheap trick, after which she gives him a powerful blow. Suddenly she realizes that she has already spent so much mana on the first path alone, looking around contentedly, and casts her gaze at Chop, saying that now he will have to help her. At the same time, Gaiad's weapon breaks into 2 pieces, and Gaiad himself flies away. Mem, sitting on the floor, calls the hero names, wondering how quickly he dealt with her friend. The hero asks if the adventurers really want to get the witch's potion so much in order to gain even more strength, thinking that they are already so strong. But Meme assumes that he is laughing at her and asks if he still remembers her. Then she reminds him about a girl in the past who fought with a centaur from the Killian forest, but then realizes that he will not remember, since he defeated the monster with whom she fought for a very long time in just one moment. However, contrary to her expectations, the hero remembers her and tells her that the girl skillfully used a spear for her age. Meme screams that it was her revenge for her father, which Zion took away in front of her eyes. The hero understands what she is talking about, and in response asks to accept her apologies, when suddenly the girl screams that she does not need his apologies, and promises to surpass him, no matter what. Then Memi uses a magic boost, and suddenly starts screaming. Her limits are exceeded, and her desire to surpass the hero increases. Zion is greatly frightened by the fact that the girl enters a magical overload, because he understands that she may die. But she replies that she wants it and starts attacking the hero. He notices that the girl is very fast and her strength has grown significantly, but in a state of magical overload, the human body will not last long. Then the hero decides to use the black coating. After that, the girl notices that she begins to weaken and the strength gradually leaves her. She falls to the floor from impotence, muttering something. Zion explains that magic can withstand anything, but human life cannot, and says that this is why he pumped out magic with the help of a black coating. Then he leans over to her and gives her a potion to drink. Meme asks what he is trying to achieve, and the hero replies that he is very sorry that he took away her chance to avenge her father, while the girl obediently drinks the potion. Suddenly, she asks him to take her on as an apprentice and admits that she has actually admired him since that day. Therefore, if a girl cannot surpass him, she can at least learn. The hero apologizes to her and informs her that he does not take students, but he can make one exception. He suggests that she choose another path if she really surpasses him. Then Zion heads to the cave's exit and says that when Mimi finds something that needs to be protected, she will certainly be stronger than with this magic. The hero walks up to the doors and puts his hand on them. He remembers that only the 10th path is different from the others, after which he wonders, where does this door lead? Pushing the door a little, Zion opens it and sees in front of him a large room with bookcases and other furniture with various trinkets. The hero is surprised by what is happening and moves on. Eventually, he reaches the table with the girl, and she greets him, concluding that 10 years have already passed. Zion immediately becomes alarmed and asks her if she is the witch who lives here, after which he also clarifies whether those traps and monsters were her doing. The witch decides to say that she did not arrange what the hero asks her about and explains that the cave itself did it for her. The hero reports that he has come for a potion when he suddenly notices elf ears on the table and aggressively asks where she got them from. The witch asks why Zion is interested in this, and he tells her that it bothers him very much, especially because there are elves among his acquaintances. Therefore, every time he sees this, he is overcome with anger. Then the girl is going to be indignant when suddenly a blade is put to her forehead. The hero points his sword at her and tells her to put her hands on the table. Then he decides to ask again about where she got those ears from, and the witch reluctantly tells him that with the help of teleportation, she sometimes goes to the city and buys potion ingredients from one person. Then the hero clarifies the name of this person, and the girl calls him Opto. According to her, he has the largest tool shop in the capital. Zion concludes that this man is not easy, and then asks about who he is. But the witch responds ambiguously to this, when suddenly the hero makes a swing with his sword and breaks the jars with ingredients. The girl screams in surprise and says that it is very expensive. However, the hero replies that he does not want to know exactly how much it costs, and adds that he is not going to have a conversation with someone who is lying. Then the witch tells that Opto is from an antisocial organization. Zion assumes that she is also a member of it, since she made illegal transactions selling longevity potions. But the girl asks him to believe that she is one of these, after which she clarifies what she should do to do this. The hero first asks her to tell everything related to the antisocial organization, and then tells her not to make any deals with them. But then he also asks to give the breast augmentation potion, which the witch agrees to. After a while, Zion leaves the cave and tells Haku everything. He assumes that Opto himself goes to the elf village or sends an accomplice. The hero thinks more about the last assumption. Suddenly, approaching the building, the guys notice a sign saying that entry with pets and henchmen is prohibited, and Hack falls into despair. He understands that this was done so that the room would not stink of animals. But Zion says that he does not stink. Huck says it's all because he washes every day, after which the hero enters the building. When he sees an unfriendly guy, he assumes that he is the owner of the store and clarifies this. The guy confirms his guesses. Then Zion tells me that he has heard that a scary granny lives in the cave of 10 ways. The guy replies that she is not scary, after which he says that it is generally just a rumor. Then the hero notices that it is good to live in the capital, because there are so many interesting goods here, and the king is a wonderful person. Watching the reaction of the interlocutor, the guy is unhappy to clarify whether Zion just came to talk about life, and asks him to leave if he is not going to buy anything. He understands that the witch did not lie, and the store owner really reacts sharply to such questions. Then the hero tells that he has a couple of questions, and promises not to touch the guy if he answers them honestly. He asks if his name is Opto, to which he does not answer anything. Zion folds his arms over his chest and asks if he was mistaken. Then the hero adds that the witch from the cave told him this, which causes the store owner to be shocked. He asks Zion about who he is anyway. Then he introduces himself as the former hero of darkness, Zionax. The hero apologizes for the late performance, which makes the guy cry out nervously, clenching his teeth. After that, the hero asks the first question. Does the organization extract the ears of elves from another country, only for a longevity potion? Then he asks the second question. Do they have an external patron? And finally, the third question is, will the guy continue to engage in antisocial activities? He notices that Zion did not overdo it, declaring himself a hero, and recalls that Axe visited this country in the past. Then Opto asks if there is evidence that he is facing a hero now, and Zion tells him that he lost the ring recently, saying that it will be difficult to do so. Then the guy says that the real hero will not lose the ring, after which he pulls out a special object with which he is going to find out whether the hero is lying or not. Octo says that this magical thing measures the mana of the enemy. As soon as it does, it must find out his combat power. But when he points the object at the hero, he begins to watch with horror in his eyes as the indicators rise sharply. Suddenly, the amount of mana exceeds 350,000, and Opto begins to think that this is a joke, because even the most powerful royal magician had about 300,000. The hero grabs a magic object and asks the guy if he knew that elves hate people, remembering that people had attacked him before. Then he adds that after everything had happened, he gradually began to believe in people. However, now the hero is watching how people mutilate elves because of their greed. Then he destroys the magic item, saying that it is unforgivable. Then the guy promises to tell Zion everything, but only on one condition. He says that his other members will find out about this. They will kill him because he only took over the place of his father, who was in the organization. Then the guy tells that after the death of his father, he began to do business with a witch who was in the Cave of 10 Ways, folding his hands in front of him as if begging for mercy. Zion explains that if Opta leaves the city, the hero Arya will protect him, asking what he will say in response to this. The guy realizes that he is familiar with the hero of the water, and admits that this is encouraging. Then Opto folds his hands on the table and suggests starting with the elves first, after which he tells that he has heard that elves are being attacked at the moment. He then adds that the members of the organization are targeting not only the elves' ears for the potion, but also a certain magical item, after which he remembers that they also turn elves into a prohibited commodity. The hero is enraged by this, as he realizes that elves are not weaklings at all. Then he, with a serious look, asks the question, how do the members of the organization deal with them? Upon hearing this, Opta decides to report that there is a traitor among the elves who cooperates with an antisocial organization. At these words, Zion's eyes open in horror, and he asks the interlocutor again. Then the guy adds that in addition, they have a patron who is called the Reaper Chain. He says that men are being killed, their ears and eyes are being taken away, and women are being turned into prohibited goods instead. However, Opto admits that he does not know what is done to women after that. Then the hero, stretching out his hand forward, decides to forget about the Reaper for now, and assumes that the purpose of the antisocial organization in which the guy himself belongs is to overthrow the government, after which he clarifies this with the Opt. In response, he says that in 5 days there will be a parade in honor of the prince's birthday celebration, and explains that this was their goal, when suddenly the hero tells him the shocking news. Zion says that, however, the shelter in the church was attacked, which caused the guy to briefly fall into a stupor while processing the information received. Then it comes to him, and Opta realizes that it was the hero himself and his friends, after which he asks if it really was them. He replies that, and concludes that, as a result, the assassination attempt on the prince was cancelled, clarifying this. But the guy grabs his head and admits that he has not heard about the cancellation. He then adds that he would actually like to stop them, but it is not known what losses this store would have suffered. Then Zion asks him not to tell anyone about him in this conversation and, in this case, decides to help Opto, after which he turns around and heads for the exit. But in response, the guy also asks not to spread anything about him, because if the members of the organization find out that he betrayed them, they will cut out his entire family. The hero stops for a moment and realizes that he has become too naive. Then he thinks about the fact that he no longer knows what is justice and what is not, after which he leaves. Then the story moves to the house of Arya's mentor. Zion apologizes for being late, and a friend approaches him, who is glad that he finally showed up. Then she adds that the teacher is already overjoyed, when suddenly she runs up to the hero and throws her arms around his neck, shouting that she believed in him and knew that he could. After that, she squeezes her breasts and starts showing them to the hero, asking him to rate her. The teacher says that the result of the potion is obvious, but then decides that after all, stop admiring it while Arya burns with shame behind her back. Then the girl points to a table on which a lot of food is prepared and informs that today, the guys can eat to the brim, winking at them. The hero and the hack immediately start drooling from such an appetizing kind of food. The beast admits that he does not believe that it was all cooked by hand, and Zion immediately suggests starting the meal. Hack starts eating and screams that the teacher's food is excellent, and the hero agrees with him, because everything is really very tasty. Then the teacher smilingly tells me that she studied this to become a good wife. She then adds that cooking is even at a better level than her fighting skills, but nevertheless the girl is still single. Arya is starting to get bored with all this, and she says that the main thing for a woman is not to grumble or complain. Suddenly, the girl remembers the promise of the teacher and, with a serious look, asks what about heroism. She starts laughing and still agrees to be the hero of the water for a short time. Then Arya starts screaming with joy and rushes into the arms of the teacher, saying that she loves her. Then the teacher stands up and announces that she will be a hero with big breasts and will get a good guy. At this time, Hawk and Arya notice that she is finally happy, although she is still sick of the idea of mandatory marriage. The story shifts to the hero, who is standing on the street, immersed in himself. He thinks that the future consists of small decisions that a person chooses, deciding that it is no longer possible to doubt and not pay attention. Zion understands that this is about the Reaper and the antisocial organization, and they must be stopped. Suddenly, his friends run up to him and tell him that the teacher got drunk and fell asleep. When Hawk suggests that Sione move on, he informs them that he is going to the village of the elves. Then the friends immediately reply that they will go with him and ask why he needs to go there. Arya wonders if she won't be able to go tomorrow. Realizing that it's dark and worried about Zion, the hero replies that there is no way another day and is going to go to the village right now, after which he asks Arya to stay. The girl begins to object, saying that she wants to go with him, but Zion replies that he has his reasons and asks her to listen. He says that in 5 days, an antisocial organization will launch an assassination attempt on the prince on his birthday. The hero asks Arya to protect a guy named Opto, who provided this information. Zion admits that he would like to return as soon as possible, but realizes that it does not seem to work. Then he decides that he will feel safer if the girl stays. Arya asks if the hero trusts her, looking at him with his exciting gaze, and he replies that of course he trusts her. Then the girl becomes more confident and promises that she will never betray his trust. She then adds that everything will be fine, asking to leave the kingdom to her and her teacher. After that, Zion sits on Haka and says he will be back soon. The beast has been galloping around the field for some time. He says that he replenished Lunaria's calorie reserves, and now he can run all night. The hero thanks him for this and informs him that he needs to arrive as soon as possible. Then he uses all his strength and accelerates a little more, leaving dust in his wake. Suddenly, the story shifts to the southwest of the Principality of Galana, the Strad Forest. This place is also known as the Forest of the Lost. Small houses similar to each other were built on large trees. In one of them, an elf addresses his relatives and assumes that the thief of the elves must definitely be a human. The oldest elf says that, in his opinion, the kidnapper is pretending to be an elf, which makes the others wary. Suddenly, the girl turns to the elder and suggests that he may already suspect someone, and then he tells her that the enemy may be pretending to be Lunala. He had spoken to her yesterday, but had noticed that her breathing sound was different from Elvish. Others begin to whisper, not believing that Lunala has been replaced, because she is still so young. Then they start to worry even more and clench their hands into fists. Suddenly, the elder turns to Kuna, remembering that Lunale was her friend. The girl confirms this, and then he asks her to look after her friend, realizing that it will be difficult for her. At first, she replies that she can, but then changes her face and says that she will do it. Then Kuna adds that if the enemy is hiding in the image of Lunale, then you need to quickly get the location of the girl herself out of him. The elder says that he sees how confident she is in her abilities, but asks her not to overdo it. In response, Kuna screams that he will catch the enemy even if he bleeds, but he repeats his previous phrase again. Then the girl picks up her bow and gravely announces that she is going, clenching her free hand into a fist. After that, she begins to move quickly in the right direction, jumping from one branch to another. Suddenly, when the girl runs along another branch, a cute slime jumps out from the right side of her, who is obviously very happy about her appearance. He calls out to Kuna, and she immediately notices him. The girl apologizes for making him wait, calling Slim Punin. But he replies that everything is fine, saying that it did not cause him any discomfort. Then she takes Punin with her and invites him to go to Lunala. If she agrees, she tells Slim to climb on her back. Punin understands that we are talking about a merger and immediately fulfills the request. After that, a fusion takes place between the girl and Slime, and they become practically one being. In the process, Panini climbs onto Kuna's head. She thinks that she does not want to think that Lunali has become a fake, although at the same time she understands that the elder's eyes do not lie. Kuna decides that now is not the time to relax, when suddenly Panini turns to her and asks if it was Lenali, pointing to the girl in front. The girl sees that her friend is hiding from someone and decides to hide nearby. After taking a closer look, Kuna confirms Panini's guesses and wonders, what is she doing? Suddenly, Lenali disappears somewhere, while Kuna only manages to blink. But then, she catches herself and informs Panini that they are coming for her. Kuna starts running after Lenolin, who, surprisingly, moves very fast. The girl realizes that she cannot keep up with her and begins to suspect something is wrong, as she is the fastest in the village. Then Kuna begins to think that her friend is an imposter after all, as the elder said, when suddenly she resorts to a strange place, right behind her and hides behind a tree trunk. The girl realizes that Lenali has left the village, after which she wonders who all these people are who gathered where she came from. Suddenly, one of the suspicious men asks the alley clan about one elf. At the same moment, the girl turns towards Kuna and informs him that she is here and hiding behind a tree, pointing at him with her finger. Then Kuna falls into a stupor and wonders, did Lenali lure her? But suddenly she turns to her and asks her to come out, calling her by name. From this turn of events, the girl gets lost and tries to figure out what to do.